I'd like to call to order a meeting of the Board of Selectmen, and I'd invite the audience to join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So in our packet, we have minutes from our open session meeting on April 9th. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes or amend them?
I would like to suggest 2 small amendments, if you don't mind. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up so I can. Oh, great. One was around the discussion from Mass DOT. We have a pedestrian crossing light similar to the one at Merrimack College cannot be installed, and I would just like to clarify the reason that it was not recommended to be installed, just for the record, which was that it would introduce confusion being installed at an intersection where Adams Ave, cars are turning out of Adams Ave onto Mass Ave, and it is only recommended to put that kind of crossing mid-road, not at an intersection, however you phrase that. And then there was one other one, sorry. Oh, under the CPC recommendations, there was an explanation that they did not approve the application from St. Paul's Church to do the Supreme Court decision. There was another one that was not approved, which was a housing improvement, which was not approved because they're instead recommending a needs assessment or funding a needs assessment so that we can see the prioritization of improvements. I just think that's worth noting for the record as well.
Somebody will ask me, I want to
Right,
remember.
exactly.
Okay, motion made by Selectman Keen to amend the minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second by Selectman Nobley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Spadili. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes pass. So under communications and announcements, we have our town clerk with us this evening, as well as quite a few members of the North Andover Police Department. And I would, I guess, invite our police chief up to the podium to introduce Catherine Gerke and Freddie Almanzar-Thomas to talk about their swearing in this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's with great pleasure that I'm introducing Sergeant Catherine Gerke and Sergeant Freddie Almanzar. Sergeant Gerke comes from us from the Hingham Police Department back in 2005. She lateral transferred to North Andover, made an immediate impact with the department, goes above and beyond for her projects, whether she's working on a car seat or she's working on a big investigation. She really steps up her game and sets an example. Looking forward to having her on a shift with Sergeant Almanzar and really complementing each other and bringing us huge steps forward with the training and how she handles herself in the department. And Sergeant Almanzar comes from a 2013 reserve position in North Andover, full-time in 2014 to where we are today. Not much to say about him. He's a Marine. Look at, he's imposing. He knows what he's doing. But what I do want to point out to him, to all of you and the audience, Sergeant Almanzar, as you know, I coach youth sports, and I was coaching football this last year, and we had some kids in the team that were just, they looked like him, big kids, but they were just having a lot of trouble. And Sergeant Almanzar took time out of his day to come down and train these kids, work with them, practice with them, come to games, made an immediate impact with these as not only a mentor and a role model, but they made some big plays afterwards too. So it just goes to show that he's, you know, loyalty is not just to the police department, it's to the town of North Andover. And I'm extremely proud of that, and I can't wait to be working with these two, and it's going to be great.
Gone up. She was Joyce. I'm looking right there. Joyce, if you want to, I was looking completely in the back. I always end up missing you in the front. If you'd like to come up and invite.
Well, thank you so much. This is the best part of my job, and an honor and a privilege to welcome these two wonderful young people to be here to protect all of us, and how much we all appreciate it. right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
Catherine Gerke,
solemnly promise
solemnly promise
and affirm
and affirm
that I will honestly,
that I will honestly,
faithfully,
faithfully,
sincerely,
sincerely,
and impartially
and impartially
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
that are incumbent upon me
that are incumbent upon me
as a sergeant
as a sergeant
on the North Andover Police Department.
on the North Andover Police Department.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Official, please sign.
Last but not least, Freddie. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, solemnly promise and affirm that I will faithfully, honestly, sincerely, and impartially perform all the duties that are incumbent upon me as a sergeant on the North Andover Police Department. So help me God.
And just one other thing, before I sit back down. When we originally appointed them, the town manager gave us permission to go ahead with it just because of staffing issues, and we sort of made it happen originally before we did the official one here. Freddie's mother was rather upset because she wasn't going to be able to see him when it was happening, so it's her birthday today, so Mrs. Thomas? Okay, we're good? Okay? Everything good? Very good.
That's your birthday present, by the way.
So with that being said, I guess that we can, I don't know if we want to jump now to letting the room, I mean, they can clear out. I mean, this is, you don't have to, you don't have to stay this entire, I mean, I appreciate having a captive audience, but I don't think that you want to stay through the licensing. Nobody was moving. I'm like, did I miss something on the agenda?
Give him the flag.
Attended. I guess everyone can leave.
See that? They loved Freddie at the high school. They were bummed when he left. Honest to goodness.
I think it's great that there's, for folks at home, you know, we have a substantial number of the police department here,
Yeah.
as well as their family and relatives, so
Yep.
it's a nice showing for 2 new sergeants in our police department. That being said, we do have several other employees, and so I guess as everyone's filing out, we can invite our Director of Human Resources, Kathy Darby, to introduce our new Chief Assessor and Community Service Officer.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'm really pleased again tonight to introduce to you 2 staff members. First is Frederick Ladd. We call him Rick. He's our Chief Assessor. Fred comes to us from another community where he served 6 years as an assistant assessor. He has 25 years in real estate, appraisals, broker, sales, and management, so it's really great to have him. He's also a certified officer with the Mass Association of Assessing Officers, so he comes to us with quite a great skill set, and we're really happy to have him. This is Rick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And with Katie, this is baptism by fire, so to speak. This is Catherine Kozakowski. Today's her first day on the job as the community service officer in the police department. She's so new, she hasn't had a uniform yet, but nevertheless, she's come and done a great job. Chief has already told me. Katie comes to us again from another community. She has a Bachelor of Science degree from UMass Amherst with a concentration in animal science. This is actually the first time I've seen someone that actually has a degree with a concentration in animal science in the position. She's also a certified animal control officer graduating from the academy in Boylston. And Katie comes to us from another community where she just spent 3 years there as well. So welcome, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. And so,
And a lot more.
so I'm actually going to jump up to F on the agenda under communications and invite Chris McClure to give an IT update, because I know his schedule was tight before inviting the youth center up to talk about the many programs. And so, Chris, thank you for joining us this evening.
So I broke my cardinal rule and actually put a PowerPoint together tonight. Just I'm getting old enough that I can't remember everything I want to talk about if I don't write it down.
I'll say it, Dick.
I'm just approving my two-factor authentication.
Redesigned Gmail.
I won't take full credit for that. Well, that actually feeds. I was thinking, as I was writing, every once in a while, Andrew lets me come out of the server closet and talk about some of the things we're doing. Okay. I will say that working with NACAM, we have targeted upgrading the AV systems in this room. We've noticed that after the renovation, the brightness of the projector and just the formatting needs a little goose. So after town meeting, you can look forward to some enhancements to the AV in this room. Okay. So as I was writing up the accomplishments, for the recent past, I started thinking about something that Andrew and I talk about a little bit in our meetings, and it's something that I think really differentiates North Andover from a lot of communities, and that's how we manage change. And to Andrew's point about still embracing the new Gmail, I think one of the things that North Andover does really well is we've learned the skill of changing. That's difficult sometimes in government, local government especially. It's not the old idea that you update your computer every 5 years, that you have to learn new systems in this very sort of long process, and change is this painful thing that people dread. In the modern world, it's something that everyone expects to happen almost constantly, and learning that as a skill is important and something that really makes us competitive and sets us apart. So how do we get there? So one of it is a lot of communication, a lot of training, and using the modern platforms that we have to do that training. So in addition to doing training in this room oftentimes, we do a lot of online training. And again, working with NACAM, we've made it a point to record as many trainings as we can so that those get captured on our YouTube channels, on our staff portals, and staff has access to that on demand when they want. It also allows new staff to come in and have access to all those trainings that we've already done without having to get caught up. So though, a few concepts around that. The idea of form-space planning, about having a plan for change, communicating it, having agile systems. So as Chris was pointing out, the new Gmail update was something that just happens. It's something that people are prepared for. As we do the training, people learn the concepts, so they're not relearning the concepts over and over again, and we're able to grow and expand on what we know as opposed to starting over again. And because I know you're going to ask me about security, we talk about the importance of change to security, because one of the hardest things to hit is a moving target. And I think this is something that when you see places that have problems, a lot of times they have not changed in a long time and they have no capacity to change. So by refreshing hardware, updating software, being able to take advantage of new features. So for example, even though the new Gmail is pretty, there are some very real security features that are being rolled out in that, in terms of making it harder to do phishing and things like that, that we're able to take advantage of because we have these systems in place. So I won't spend too much time on that, but I thought that was an important concept to talk about. So a project that's coming to town meeting, that's the kind of nerdy thing that I get excited about, but I can see where some people might find it a little dry. At the same time, just like the change management, this type of thing, along with having good master planning, really pays dividends down the line in terms of having consistent governance. So at a prior town meeting, a bylaw recodification project was approved. So working with the town clerk, community development, town council, with management from oversight from town manager, we have diligently compared all versions of the general and zoning bylaws, looking for inconsistencies in language, format, structure, etc. And there is an article at town meeting to incorporate those changes. It's important to note that there are no actual changes to the meaning of the bylaws. It's really a formatting, a cleanup. And I have a couple examples. So let's see if this comes up. So this is sort of a preview of our bylaws that's coming. Because it hasn't been accepted and codified yet, it's not in its final state. So I thought it would be more useful to show you our neighbor in Andover, who's already gone through this process. And so you see it becomes a very dynamic experience where you can interact, search, look up sections, etc. And if you want, you can still download the PDF version of the section or the entire thing to go over. And if you really want to stay up on the bylaws, there's a mobile app where you can interact with the bylaws on the go, which would be useful for meetings like this. If you have your cell phone, you want to reference a bylaw. And in addition to the codification, I think an important thing is it really makes it easier to incorporate changes in the future. It makes it easier to get those in faster in a consistent manner without disrupting the organization. And if you haven't had the opportunity, that's actually the proposed changes are posted on the website on the town meeting page. Notice went out about it, and there are copies available in the town clerk's office. So we encourage people to take a look at that before town meeting. Another project that we are actually completing some of today is we identified over the past couple of years several document scanning projects to take a lot of the documents that we have in filing cabinets and in storage in the basement and scattered around town and make those available electronically. So we actually received a $50,000 community compact grant to do some scanning with a focus on transparency. As a result of that, we were able to scan close to 1 million new public land record pages. And I'll show you an example of that, because we also, I think, did something a step beyond, where we were able to link those to our existing Maps Online system. So that if you're looking up a property using our Maps lookup tool, it's sort of one-stop shopping. You're going to be able to get the GIS information, all the layers around that, and you're also going to be able to then search any property-related records that have to do with that. That's a dynamic link, so that as we put more and more public records into our document management system, those become available on the public website. Sure.
There's no outside vendor?
For the actual scanning, we outsource that. It's more, and that's where the grant goes in.
But the actual product that you're showing here, this is something that's we've generated ourselves.
Yeah.
The Warren Group is trying to sell this to every community in the state for a lot of dollars.
Right.
This is very valuable.
So it's basically the idea of systems integrations, where you link different systems together.
Yep.
And the idea being, as we create that, the culture of people knowing where to go to get property information, as new resources become available, they're not scattered and those become available. So we've done some other cool things too, and you can access the tax assessor map, the property record card, et cetera, through that. And we're very close to being able to link the public permit history to that as well. So that sort of completes that piece.
Is it still an on-working project, or are you done? Because I was struggling with it a little bit this weekend, looking some things.
We're never done.
Always learning.
We're never done. And if there's something that you have a question about, we'd be.
I will. But
okay.
If you look on property today, what could you search for on any
property? So historically, as people know, first of all, there wasn't anything online. Then if there was something online, you went into the assessing database. You immediately found what we call the property record card, which shows the assessed value and those kind of things. Today, from this outward-facing map, you can find the property record card. What else could you find?
So the other property-related documents, some of those we've been scanning over time, and then we just had a huge infusion. The tax assessor map is a new feature.
But those other property cards, what would that be like? A building permit?
Building,
Health
a
permit,
lot of building
septic
permit
permit.
information, mainly building permits, and things that, so the big value is downstairs. People would routinely come in and request information on properties that were stored in, file cabinets and boxes, and the staff would have to go and search and retrieve, and it wasn't an instantaneous piece. So for the most part, everything that was in those building jackets has been scanned and will be available online. So it's both an efficiency standpoint for our staff, a convenience for residents, so they can access the same information, the same public records from the convenience of their home without having to rely on staff time to get that information.
So a third party was responsible for scanning it, but then it was our staff that indexed it and imported it, or?
Yeah, so we contracted with RICO, who's on the state contract, and our copy vendor, who also specializes in large volume scanning. They're just very efficient for them to do that. So our staff basically vetted the material, prepared it, made sure it was appropriate to be scanned, organized it in a way that made sense. We agree on a fixed number of index fields that make sense. So in the case of property records, it's generally address, parcel ID, document type like building permit, the date of the permit, et cetera. So those are things that you would be guaranteed to be able to search on. They're sort of hard indexed into the document. Our system, Laserfish, also supports optical character recognition, OCR, so it's actually scanning the contents of the documents. It's hit or miss depending on the quality of the document, but generally any typewritten text or any quality text is going to be discoverable. And then that gets added as a layer. So we've just infused a couple million records, and it's a kind of a intensive process. So the server is actually churning and going through and scanning all of those records. As that happens, it increases your ability to search, where you're now able to search inside of the documents that were scanned in addition to just the general, the hard-coded index fields.
Moving forward with that structure created by the departments, every future document can then be scanned internally, match up to that template or model, and go into those property record cards electronically, making sure we're indexing on the same fields. So from this point forward, with the staff creating the structure and an outside vendor taking on the heavy load of 1 million+ pages, every future document today can be scanned through a desktop scanner, and with that, automatically indexed and added to the property record. So every day, we're adding more data to those property record files.
And where do you click on it? It used to be like right at the home page. It seems like it's moved.
Yeah, so I'll show you that. So that's, we'll get into another slide, but we've actually redesigned most of the major websites this year. So on the very home page, there's a prominent icon for property and maps. And that's actually available at the bottom of every page. So no matter what page you're on, you're going to have a link to that. Those are, we think, are pretty important links. So when I go to that, that takes me to basically our public map viewer. And then from there, I can search for property information. And it's going to bring me in. And then for some of the properties, because it's a Google product, you actually also get Google Street View available and Bing Maps, and it's this concentration. So what we've tried to do is take all of the places that you could go and get property information and make it available through a single dashboard, so you're not going to the assessor's page, to the permitting page, to the records page to get that information. And that's a fairly new project, but it's starting to come into fruition.
So you're not clicking on the GIC, which is probably better because people might not know what that means.
Yeah, we've been trying to eliminate
GIC.
sort of inside baseball nomenclature and use common terms that people would know. So property and maps, we think it's pretty clear that people would understand what that means, versus referring to it as even GIS or things that you might not know what that means.
Right.
So again, it's always a work in progress, going back to our change model. Another big public piece is we've actually scanned all of the vendor contracts online. So in addition to putting everything in one place, one of the nice things about distributed models of things is you can put things where they belong. So no matter how you might think you get to something, it takes you back to the same place. So I always try to serve up information a couple of different ways so that, I realize that not everyone thinks like I do, so they might come to it a different way, but it's taking them to the back end. So we have the ability to search vendor contracts. Again, those are records, so if you wanted to see all the contracts the town has signed going back, in the recent past, you'll be able to see those.
Almost all of this data now, as we get more sophisticated in that data, it'll reduce dramatically any request for public information, or if the request comes in, they'll be directed to a place that already exists. We won't need to reproduce the documents. We'll simply direct them to a spot on the website. Those documents will exist. And I think as folks become more familiar with our website and we're sharing more and more information and transparency increases, it reduces overall the number of requests because folks know they can get on the website. And on top of all that, it creates throughput on the website. We have more hits for people using the website more commonly, and therefore other information we're providing on the website becomes more commonly known throughout the community because you may have gone there for one reason, but you see something else on the website which may be helpful.
And to Andrew's earlier point, I think we tried to draw a line in the sand in terms of not getting in that same boat again where we have that huge volume of things to be scanned. So the process and the workflow designed to accommodate those old documents goes day forward to make sure that we're capturing new documents as they happen, so we're feeding it and not getting into that backlog. And of course, it's not perfect, but I think we're doing a pretty good job.
A really clean example is the contracts make this sort of path as they go through for signature, ultimately ending up on my desk as the last signature. I then hand it to Laurie, who has a scanner on her desk. Template already exists. She scans that contract. It uploads to the current file, so it's available electronically. Then it goes to Ray as the purchasing agent and be put in a hard file. But at this point, every single contract moving forward is scanned and put online.
And we also have a bright line internally where we had identified some documents that are confidential that would not be public, but represent a huge efficiency and savings for our staff. So one of the big burdens is payroll for the sake of investigating retirement. Was frequently between the town and the school having to take a special trip, go into the archives, dig up everything they know about employees. So with $20,000 from community preservation funding, we were able to scan, again, over 1 million pages of archived town and school employees going back 70 years. And believe it or not, they often have to go back that far. So now, again, certainly not public, but our payroll department has the ability to search for an employee, find up all their records, deliver them to that person securely without having to scavenge through those boxes and taking sometimes days or longer to get that information. So just a time savings for us. And to the change concept, there are constantly more projects being identified. So we touched on this briefly. I just wanted to highlight we had some pretty substantial changes to the NorthAndoverMaine.gov website, the NAPD site, the fire site, the youth site, and we're looking at those. The big push again, making more mobile friendly, more modern, what they call responsive design sites. So no matter what device you're looking at, the website's going to look good. It's going to scale or adapt automatically. Also through some suggestions from Andrew and some organic things, we've added some kind of experimental features to the site that I think we're having good success with. So if you go to the site during business hours, you'll actually find a live chat where you can chat with a live person. You know, obviously we can't staff outside of business hours, so that gets turned off generally at 4:30. And we've gotten pretty good at either getting right back to you or following up with an email shortly after that chat. And we do see some interesting pain points on the website that we might not have been familiar with, where people aren't able to find something and they don't reach out to us, so we didn't know that they had an issue finding that. So it really caters to, I think, a different audience of the website that we normally might see. So I think that's a positive thing. We're also doing something even a little more radical, where for the Alexa and Google Home, there's an app where you can talk and ask questions about North Andover. It hasn't gotten a lot of use yet, but the most dynamic part of that is it's actually tied right to the live Google meeting calendar. So if you ask questions about an upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting, it'll tell you when the next one is, what room it's in, et cetera. And there's a lot of room for improvement and growth on that, but I think it shows our willingness to try new things. What's that?
So Alexa is hooked up to our website? Is this what you're saying?
Yes.
Can you demonstrate that?
I have demonstrated on NCAM. It would be kind of difficult to demonstrate now, but there is a YouTube video where and I'll talk about that in a bit. But there's basically,
amazing.
Yeah, on the website.
We believe we're the first community in Massachusetts that introduced the idea of a chat. And
Yeah, that's great.
we believe, if not the first community, one of the first communities in Mass to incorporate either Google Home or Alexa.
The only thing is, you wouldn't want people to use that to say, like, call the police?
Yeah, so I think I mean, unfortunately, we can guide people so
Unless they don't
much.
have
I
a
think we
telephone,
try
that's
to, if you go to the Connect With Us tab, which we hope is pretty intuitive, in addition to our traditional social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, et cetera, and again, you know, the town has its own mobile app where we also try to tie a lot of this together. We have this eGov, and if you go to that eGov, because it is a little, we're starting to get into some uncharted waters here, so we tried to make it as easy as possible to get this set up and for people to use. And again, this is sort of like research and development in terms of this area here, but we hope to follow up and make
There's
that
a
a little more
limited number of
powerful.
questions you can ask Alexa or Google Home, and that is certainly not one of them.
But, yeah, don't misinterpret my questions. I think this is fantastic. I'm really excited about it. I just,
No, we struggle. We struggle with those because as hard as we try and as explicit as we make some things to say, don't use this for emergency purposes, we can't make people read sometimes, and so
yeah.
we
Or
try
if they're in a state of panic,
Right.
they're not going to be, you know.
And that's why we try to careful for on the chat, for example, that it's not available after hours, so that we're not getting those people hanging. And to that point as well, again, I mentioned NCAM a few times tonight. Brian and I do about once a month. We do a series where he comes in and I just show people different features on the website. We try to repeat concepts because as hard as it is for me to believe, not everyone is watching every video or up to date on every change we're making. So we try and hit the topics, repeatedly. The mobile app, the different functionality. There's a lot that you can do online in terms of how dynamic the calendars are, the social media, so those are all on YouTube and posted, and also posted on NCAM. I promise I don't have too much more. Also on the web, we've really tried to push more online forms, permits. We're doing really well with the permitting. That's been a big success. All the building permits are online, and we're now moving into making like the one-day liquor licenses, the Board of Health permits, et cetera, and expanding on that. And that's another area where we're finding we're doing better than a lot of communities who struggle with that, who generally tend to get building permits online and then kind of hit a wall. So we're really pushing through that with a nice coordinated effort from the land use and community development departments.
The gas, some time ago, you authorized me to sign the service connections for individual residents for gas, as opposed to the larger ones. Those are now being filed, either the larger ones that come before you or the ones that I authorize. They're coming over this automated system. They go through the normal path. The building department is checked. All the departments review it. It makes it through a sequence until it arrives to me on my electronic desk. I get to review it. I can actually see a copy of the plan, determine whether or not it meets the criteria that I can authorize. If I do, I approve it. It's done. It's a permanent record. Folks get it. The gas company doesn't have to walk in the office anymore. They see the approval. They can print off a copy of that. If for some reason it gets hung up, it's clear why. And if it has to go before the Board of Selectmen, then I reject it with a notice saying this has to go before the board. So all of that material is now done from someone's home or someone's office, and they can get that information, and it creates a solid record of what happened through the process.
But people still can go downstairs and do their business at the desk. 'Cause
Yeah, we
some people,
typically put them to the computer to go through the same process so that we have a permanent record, but yes, they can come into town hall at any time. We sit with them and we step them through the process.
Yeah, generally we take the attitude of trying not to force people. So we use attrition, getting as many people, and then we find that generally things reach momentum, and then it makes it a much more pleasant experience. And to the point Andrew was making to follow up, in addition to the convenience and the transparency of the public, it also greatly increases efficiency internally, because these are things that used to be sort of serial processes where a folder would come in and it would get stuck on the desk of whoever was looking at it for however long, and then it would move to the next person. So in this place, everyone who needs to take action on that permit or request can be in there simultaneously. There may be some things that are contingent upon others, but the workflow also prevents permits being issued without satisfying all of the workflow requirements. So for example, one of the really neat things we did on the building permits is the tax collector's office actually is part of the workflow for every permit that gets issued, so they can research whether a person is delinquent in their taxes to the point where they would be ineligible to receive a permit. So that's something that was never really done before. We just didn't have the capacity, so we're able to catch that is part of the process now. Yep, go ahead. Sure.
So that's the users here, but how about the builders themselves and those folks that come in that kind of interface with this process? How do we get them to adopt that?
I'm glad you asked that question. They love the system. They actually are the biggest users, and I think one of the things we tried really hard to do is we use a product called Viewpoint Permitting, which is a cloud-based solution. It's becoming sort of the default permitting application in the state. It's very popular, very user-friendly, and so we build that proficiency. What we see is a lot of contractors who come in are already familiar with the system, and they use it in multiple communities, so it's not very difficult for them to adapt to it here. And
Industry even log on, their material is stored. So instead of having to go through that process if there's a license or things like that, then they become used to what the documents are. All the documents can be uploaded. So they can do it from their desk. Most contractors don't want to be here during the workday. They want to be doing the business end of things early in the morning or at night, because during the day, they're making money.
Right.
And so not having to come into town hall is a good thing to them. We found out those are the most prolific users because they want to sit at their desk at night and do the work, and they can do it where before they couldn't come to town hall, right?
Good.
And there are some sophisticated pieces where it actually integrates live with the state licensing system. So it's validating when people are pulling permits that they're authorized, that they have a valid license to do that. So
awesome.
it's worked surprisingly well considering how many moving pieces there are, and people that aren't in town hall a lot. But it's been a quiet success, and now we're looking to expand. So moving on, I just wanted to touch base because there's a new idea that Andrew and I discussed recently around social media. We have a really robust social media audience. We're now at 4,308 Twitter followers, which, to be honest with you, is probably critical mass for a community this size. There's only so many people that can be on Twitter based on population, et cetera. And we've got just over 3,000 Facebook followers. On both of those, we see a lot of engagement with the public. We've gotten very good at sort of publishing procedural things. So every agenda gets posted, a lot of news gets posted. We share a lot of information around town. We've now started posting information from the police department on ours as well, so we're doing some cross-posting. But I think back to the theme of change, we've decided that we can do a better job making those posts more engaging, sort of modern, adding photos, working with DPW and getting project updates, photos of projects, the sort of thing that really makes it more attractive. And so Andrew and I are working with HR on the possibility of doing some sort of, very part-time social media intern that's maybe just a little savvier than any of us in terms of how to maximize social media engagement.
I'm close to 1,000 followers. I'm feeling pretty good. Rick is the social media guru over here. That's what it's over.
But yeah, I think over the last 2 or 3 years, we've gone to around 1,000 Twitter followers to 4,300. So it's been pretty powerful. Part of that, again, we've increased our partnerships with NACAM, working with us. We've made sure now to post almost all major meetings on YouTube. So in addition to watching their website, sometimes it's more convenient for people just to subscribe or access those. So you can actually watch all board selectmen meeting, the school committee, finance committee, et cetera, on their YouTube channels, and those are easy to share and publish, et cetera. And then we talked about the new web feature series that gets posted on there as well. So if you're curious about something coming up on the website, generally we touch on those topics every month. We're almost done. So another big thing, and this is really just informational, working with public safety. They are moving to a more robust emergency notification system. The one we currently have is fine. It works well. I have to say this is probably the most I've seen any community use the emergency notification system, and people really expect and like it. So there's a product called Rave Emergency Notifications that does everything the current system does with some enhancements, including more integration into 911, more of a two-way ability. So one of the programs that the public safety was working on is the UCARE program, where you can store information about high-risk people, seniors at risk, et cetera. So this has more ability to store information about that, and when people call in to identify that this may be someone who has additional needs, more survey options, a more robust mobile app, et cetera. Day one, in terms of the people used to receiving a phone call to remind them that the trash holiday is coming, that will all function exactly the same. And we're just going to be launching some pretty aggressive public awareness campaigns to get people, a lot of it's obviously opt-in information where you're filling out volunteer information to help make emergency responders' decision-making a little better. So more to come on that. And then finally, it's just sort of a preview. I've had the interesting experience of sitting along with Brian as ex officio members on the Verizon cable license renewal for the last couple of years. I was saying today at the meeting I have new appreciation for Andrew's involvement in managing the Board of Selectmen, because there are a lot of challenges to organizing a committee over a couple of years, so I have a new appreciation. Some general thoughts. The contract actually expires on June 2nd, and as of tonight, the committee is in agreement, I think, on the terms of the contract. For those of you who have had experience with cable or PEG license renewals in the past, it's been a pretty old-fashioned process. They typically negotiate 10 or 15-year contracts. The technology is not too rapidly changing. You're generally dealing with sort of a neighborhood cable company. I think what we found with Verizon is this was their first renewal after their initial entry into the market. So if people remember how excited people were about Fios in sort of the last go-around. And there's been a lot of changes to the industry. The most notably is that Verizon has basically decided for everyone they're only doing 5-year contracts as opposed to a 10-year contract. It's just not on the table. And I think the committee struggled a little bit this year with the anxiety around what that means in terms of Verizon not explicitly saying it, what the future of cable access may be, envisioning a world where they don't want to tie themselves down to a 10-year contract because the technology could so radically change in the next 5 years that there may not be need for a cable franchise agreement the way technology works. So that was the biggest, I think, hurdle around thinking about this. And without Verizon explicitly reassuring continuance or any in that vein. That being said, the rest of it was fairly conventional, the way it works. So in the prior cable negotiation had negotiated a 2.7% operating access fee. And just as a note, 5 is the max and the sort of most common percentage that communities go for. Honoring the wishes of the prior cable negotiation, they had stipulated that basically there are 2 cable companies, Comcast and Verizon, and it's good to have competition, but it introduces some complexities in terms of bargaining with both of them, so that the agreement was that both are at 2.7% currently, and that if Comcast or Verizon goes to 4% in their renewal, that Comcast will match that 4% renewal, and that was the thinking is that stair-step increase in the last piece. I'll let Brian speak to more of this as it really affects his budget. But the impact in that would be give or take $1 a month per subscriber. I know NCAM feels strongly about continuing the quality product they put out. They've got their new studio on Main Street, and they've got some exciting things planned. But the idea was to give a brief summary tonight with more details on the contract coming prior to the meeting on the 15th, and then.
So the foreshadowing is Verizon is at least implying through their actions that they are likely not in the traditional cable business 5 years from now. Now we all see, I know that Mr. Valancourt is creative and usually ahead of the curve in this stuff, and we see the industry changing. Some of us certainly see the industry changing. The only thing they need a license from this board for is cable, not for internet, not for cell phone, not for telephone. It's simply to have a cable license. And cable, as we know it, is probably not, at least with Verizon, probably not going to be here 5 years from now. At least that's in the form that we know it, or at least that's what they're implying through their own actions when it takes, just some of the ways that they've approached this particular agreement. What that means, we don't really know. It starts to raise questions, and I think that Brian is certainly well aware of that. What does that mean for local access? If people are getting their cable off of products they purchase over Wi-Fi, what does it mean in the long term in terms of make sure you have local access cable and access to those kind of things? So the world in this, this world is changing as it relates to what we traditionally know as cable. And I think what Verizon is implying, if not literally saying, is they expect it to be even more dramatically different 5 years from now. And so I think that's why they've held with all of their customers, all of their licensing authorities throughout the Commonwealth, that they're going to stick to this sort of 5-year approach, because I think they're indicating they expect things to be different in 5 years. But historically, they've been 10 to 15-year agreements.
And I think, one of the frustration, I mean, speaking for the board, was that Verizon basically, it appeared they're hedging their bets a little bit. So they didn't explicitly say anything. They put the 5-year term out, and you're sort of left to your imagination as to what that might mean. And the other piece, I think, just reaching the end of this, the frustrating piece is we've seen several communities actually go beyond sort of into contract extension, where they've sort of telegraphed that they are comfortable doing that. So, we have, the board has been very diligent in terms of working. The state has very rigid timelines in terms of when things must be posted and filed, et cetera. And I know the committee, and helping them with this, has met every deadline, every requirement, going back a couple of years now, and felt like we should have been in a position to settle this months ago. We're in that position where it feels like it's late at the 11th hour coming in with some of this stuff, but also counting ourselves lucky that we're at the table and not pushing into negotiation where, some of our NCAM's budgeting may be in jeopardy going forward. So, sure.
Did you say that this negotiation is the first time we've been back at the table to renegotiate a contract with Verizon?
Yes, since the first, yeah.
So
We had a 10-year contract with them initially.
So prior to that agreement, it was just Comcast that was in
Correct.
Andover?
Correct.
Verizon Fios is a relatively new player.
And then do we feel, it seems like the 5-year contract is being driven by Verizon, but the same isn't necessarily true for Comcast, where their future is a little bit more.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance here, so I'll try and summarize at a very high level. The committee was in sort of new territory here and made some arguments. The committee's feeling was that there was a substantive difference between a 5-year and a 10-year contract, and tried to negotiate with Verizon other things that may acknowledge the fact that that instability with that 5-year should or may have a cost to it. In terms of understanding the statutes around this, the sort of level playing field statute, one of the things that came to light is you cannot use term as part of the level playing field. So in other words, if Verizon and Comcast are to compete for customers in North Andover, really there are 3 variables. There's the term, there's the operating, the percentage, basically the PEG access fee, there's some capital funding to go to fund equipment purchases and that sort of thing. And those are sort of very conventional. Only the percentage and the capital can be factored into the level playing field argument. There can be no compelling of term in terms of considering that. And again, the argument we made is it introduces the precedent that a 5-year contract could be the norm. Back to our focus of change, though, unfortunately, things are changing very, very quickly in this arena. And it's just something, I think, being proactive. Signing this, we'll have 5 years. Ironically, we're going to have to renew Verizon twice before the original Comcast 10-year license renews at this point. So from a pacing schedule, it makes that a bit challenging.
It's why I think we should, because this is...
Yeah, we're getting kind of technical.
I would say that's why I'm leaning toward the fact that Verizon views their world as changing in a different way than Comcast. Comcast has been the steady player in what we know as the cable industry. We probably should be changing that term because it's not really the right nomenclature any longer. And Verizon either expects that they will not be viewed any longer as a cable company and therefore would not be requiring any license, or believes the industry will change such that they will not be in it in the same way, and therefore the 5-year agreement from their perspective makes more sense. It could very well be that it's just a position, that it's a 5-year agreement. I still think, obviously, executing the agreement rather than having the agreement expire makes sense. It does give more choice while choice is available to residents. A lot of folks who have Verizon like the product. We shouldn't eliminate that. It just has created The cable licensing process is painfully long to begin with. The ascertainment process at the beginning of this was 2 years ago. It's not uncommon it takes this long. I guess what's uncommon is the position of one of the parties. It doesn't, if you look at the agreement, it looks similar in terms of the four corners of the agreement. It's just what's been, I'd say, frustrating is the fact that Verizon has been first originally steadfast that maybe there shouldn't be an agreement.
Right.
And then the term has been around this 5-year period where historically companies have been at 10 years. So I think you can hear through Chris that the committee has met, by the way, a tremendous number of times and sort of hit the head a little bit against the wall. But the basic fundamentals of the agreement are similar in the sense it's about term, PEG fee, and capital investment. It's always about those, but probably some foreshadowing that the industry is changing. I think that's what the takeaway for now.
So how, that's half of our that's one
Yeah.
of two of our cable providers.
Yes.
I mean, should we be working with North Andover CAM to see what that scenario would look like 5 years from now? I feel like 5 years comes really quickly.
Yeah,
In
I
the
think
event that
North Andover-
Verizon, we're not
I think North
participating.
Andover CAM has been, and North Andover CAM's board has been aware of Verizon's position probably from damn near the beginning of the discussion, and is certainly knowing that the future may change, and that's a good segue to Brian Fraser.
It is.
Yeah, I'm not here to add too much, but yes, we've enjoyed working with the town. We've served the town as much as possible, whether it was ideas for equipment or different locations to broadcast from. I mean, we're looking out in the future. So if the industry is changing, there's talk about cord cutters. The landscape's going to change, whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We're going to have to start diversifying, in where our income's coming from. So if the PEG environment changes completely, it might open doors for us. So maybe somewhere 10 years from now, we're doing more with commercial business and stuff like that. So there's ways to do it, but that's, it's adding or diversifying funding and like that. It's like steering a ship. We can come up with ideas, but it's going to take a while to gain traction with any of these things. So the support from the town and the Cable Advisory Committee has been outstanding, and we're willing to partner with the town in any way to do whatever it takes.
You've been a tremendous partner. That's why I can't imagine us losing or compromising you as a resource.
Right.
So I think what Brian, and I'll speak for him, because I think he's been great through the process, has been his board, is the fact that things like relocating to Main Street and having more of a curb presence and recognizing that operating in sort of really great outward-looking programs, but not having people know where they live and work and what they can do, having greater access to studio space, getting more involved with the business community to put on programming which allow them to have an alternative funding source, are all the things that Brian and his staff and his board have been working on, for probably the last 18 months or 2 years, in anticipation that it could be for the next 5 years, we'll have Verizon's funding to support that, and we should, and we'll have Comcast, but we just don't know what the future is. So Brian's been great, his board's been great. I think the public should know that we have all supported North Andover CAM, and whether we call it North Andover CAM or some kind of cord cutter project process that goes forward, we expect it to exist because it's a valuable source of information for our community. That's what's most important.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Great. So, thank you.
Okay.
Chris,
Thank you.
great work.
Great,
That's
thank you.
very impressive.
Very interesting.
And so we will jump back on our path with this agenda and go back to the summer summer children's shows and concerts, as well as the youth needs assessment, both under Rick Gorman.
Great. Passing out just an updated schedule of the children's common shows as well as our Sunday night concerts. We basically, once again, are putting on a great program this summer, so we will be holding Tuesday and Thursday mornings right after 4th of July. We'll have our children's shows on the Common, and then on Sunday night, which will be starting right after 4th of July, and if you look at it, we're going to try something a little bit different this year. We're going to do a post-Labor Day concert. for a late summer, early fall type aspect and see how that goes. We'll be starting that a little bit earlier due to, obviously, it getting a little bit darker at that point in time. We've done a great job of evaluating each one of the shows and the concerts, and listening to our residents of not having the same concerts and the same shows every year. So we're looking to bring in a third of new performers and acts every year, and we've done that, and that's worked out really well. We're excited. We got a $1,000 grant from the Cultural Council, and we are in the running for a $5,000 grant from TD Bank. TD Bank was a past supporter of the shows, and we'll know in the next few weeks if we get the $5,000. We will also be doing our annual May solicitation to the businesses in town to give them the opportunity to sponsor some of our shows, and some of them, like St. Michael's Church, have been great supporters of sponsoring at least one of the events that we do have. Also, the funding, our Sunday night brook skating that we hold all winter, helps support to this program too. So this has been a pretty self-sufficient program due to the support of places like the Cultural Council, TD Bank, our business community, and as well as obviously brook skating. So we're really excited. Hope that you will come down and check out one of them. Again, 10 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursdays for the children's shows, and 6 o'clock on Sunday nights on the Common. We're excited that when the middle school project is done, that we'll be actually trying to bring that down to the new amphitheater that'll be part of that project down there. So we're excited, but in the meantime, obviously the Common's a beautiful place to be in the summertime, and I think this is a great choice of a variety of different acts. It was just a quick update on that. Do you want to go into the needs assessment
Any questions for Rick
on the children's
regarding
shows?
this? No? Jump right in.
It's just a great North Andover tradition.
Really
Now,
is.
how many years we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, we've
Both of
taken it
these
over
programs.
since, unfortunately, when Bill died, we took it over, but obviously Bill was doing it for probably a
Generations.
couple decades before that. I think it has become a great tradition, and what we're seeing on the Sunday night concerts is much more of a wider range of ages. That's not just some of our older population, but kids and everything too. So I think that has a lot to do with the genres we're bringing in the music, but again, I think it's something that's really special about this community.
Dive right into the needs assessment.
So the needs assessment, which you've got a copy from Andrew on this. So this about 18 months ago, our town manager came to speak to the joint boards of the North Andover Youth Service, Recreation Services Board of Directors, as well as the nonprofit, the Joseph N. Herman Youth Center Incorporated. And we talked a little bit about everything from long-range planning to some of the things we wanted to do as a department. And one of the things that Andrew wanted us to do right from the beginning was to kind of do an assessment to really kind of justify some of the things that we're thinking about as a department and with the board. And over the last year, we put this together. We contracted with Merrimack College. It was a three-way cost share. The town paid for a third, the Joseph N. Herman paid for a third, and Merrimack College in kind gave a third. We worked with Professor Katie Kirkle, and over a course of a year, her and her assistant did a number of different things in the community, focus groups with school personnel, with parents. We were at Woodridge. We're in a number of different Royal Crest. We actually talked Katie had a number of different questions she had for all of the people on what we're doing as a community. This was not just for the youth center, it was for the youth of North Andover. So Jen Price got very involved and allowed the survey to be distributed during the school. We also had an online survey for parents that people could respond. And over the past few months, this was all put together. Katie and her assistant presented to our two boards as well as other interested residents about a month ago. And we're at the point right now that there's some really good information for here that we can take. Jen and the school department are digesting a lot of the stuff as well as you and our department are going to be looking at. Some of the really good things is I think in the assessment, you'll see what I believed all the time was that we are doing a pretty good job here in North Andover with our youth. And Katie was very impressed in terms of comparing to some other communities of what they're doing for youth. I think there were some glaring things that we need to do a better job at. One being communication and being in the large community, and obviously listening to Chris, we're working really closely on how to communicate what's going in town more. Kids in our community are very involved, whether it be at the youth center, school-related things, youth sports. So the whole aspect of kind of communicating things, whatever, that came loud and clear. The big thing for me was the social-emotional piece, which, and we're not unlike any other community, but we are dealing with a lot of youth issues right now. Number one issue for us is actually teen anxiety in all types of kids. You know, some of the kids that everyone thinks has, you know, acts together or whatever, are stressed out about where they're going to college. And we see it firsthand with even some of the kids that work for us on that. So a lot of the social emotional discussion with this is something that the school is putting on a priority list. And we are also. We're starting to offer more programs at the youth center. I mean, again, as you drive by and you see all the recreational, the social activities, what people don't know is how much we're doing in terms of the social emotional. And that's something, as we look at the department going forward in the next 5 or 10 years, is that we want to offer even more support services to our youth and to our families. So I actually, I thought the assessment was pretty well done. We were looking for a little more meat in certain areas, so we went back to Katie to do that, and actually in working with Andrew, we worked at a couple other things on her final copy of that. But I think it was well done in terms of that we needed to do it. Again, on the first hand, I think it does show we're doing a lot of great things in North Andover. But with everything, there's always room for improvement in how we can do that. And our collaboration from a municipal side with the school department, I was at the school committee meeting last week, is one of the most unique relationships in the state. And that was echoed by a bunch of the school committee people. And Nikki Murphy, our head of our social emotional learning for the school department, said that she's worked in a number of districts and have not had that type of relationship. So we're going to continue to grow and work together, but I think it's some exciting times that we're dealing here with North Andover, and I think we're doing our very best to meet the needs of the youth, and we'll continue to try to do that.
Did they give us any indication as to why we've got this social emotional issue in town? The reason I'm asking, is it something along the lines of the kids are just so into social media that they don't...
That's one of the major reasons.
Well, they're not hearing people's emotions as they speak. There's a lack of just human interaction that could even just be, you know.
It's a little different than when Andrew Mailer and I played Little League Baseball all those years ago. There's so much the kids have going on right now. Yeah, 20 years ago. There's so much that kids are involved in right now. There's so much stress. You know, we've even had to take a look at our even video games that we do at the youth center and how kids stay on those. Like, we have time limit now. We, you know, get in the gym and run around as opposed to that. I think we're also dealing in a lifestyle that things are speeding faster and faster. Technology is what you're talking about. Social media is a major issue that we deal with every day at the youth center. And I love social media. There's a lot of really good things about it, but we also need to educate kids. We need to get them more involved with different things. There's a pressure situation, and you as parents will know that, you know, you got a kid playing soccer, but oh my God, he's got to get to baseball practice, and then there's this going on. Don't forget dance. I know there's a dance at the youth center we want to get to, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and our kids are just at a little bit of different. But this is not a North Andover only thing. These are national trends that we're seeing. In my collaboration with our neighboring communities, specifically Andover Youth Services, we're all dealing with the same thing on that. So what I needed to hear from this assessment was what I thought that we needed to address, and this was we need to start investing more of our energy in. We've started an anxiety support group at the youth center, which has a number of high school girls in it right now, and we're looking at different things of how we can meet some of those needs more.
So complex and so concerning.
I think was really evident from this community's decisions, you know, 15 plus years ago, was to be ahead of the curve on the youth side, and I think this kind of assessment with Rick at the helm allows us to stay current, which is Rick's point, right? So it's great to develop a program. The question is, can you mold the program into what's currently happening in society. So we're not going to change society. This is the generation. Some of the issues that they face are unique and different than what we experienced, and we're not going to change that. We need to make sure that the programs match the needs of the community. I think the relationship that Rick has with the community, with the school department, with the public safety folks, puts us in a unique position to start to mold those programs to make sure that we're addressing the needs of young people going forward. And I think, as we've said in the past, with this board's leadership around the need for some social emotional professionals, the world is changing. That town hall is no longer this bricks and mortar place. It will be in 20 years a place where we need to provide far more outreach than we ever have to certain aspects of our population. This is a good example of that. So we're going to probably have to modify staffing going forward and programs going forward to make sure that we provide the resources that young people need and families need to make sure that they have they can be the best they can be. And so certainly Rick is typically ahead of the curve, which we appreciate, and this is a good jumping off point to start talking about the future.
Yeah, I think this is great because, it's things that we all kind of are aware of in some form or another, but to see it all laid out there and, for you to have that fortitude to go out or the foresight to go out and work with Merrimack to do that. I think this is something that should be shared with other communities as well, because like you said, it's not just a North Andover issue, it's something that affects a lot of communities, and I think it's a great study, and again, it just spells everything out and puts it right in front of you.
Yeah, and we had another basis for it too, and when we met with Andrew as a board, we're looking obviously in the next 5-6 years to be doing some potential expansion possibilities at the youth center. What would that really look like in terms of bricks and mortar or in the programming thing? And my opinion is that we need to start dedicating more time. I'm excited about the town's commitment to bring on a professional to work with everything. We talked, Phil and I have talked a number of times around the drug issue and things like that. But the more we can be proactive in addressing these issues, as Andrew said, these things are not going away. We're living in some great times, but some scary times, and we just need to make sure that we're ahead of it and at least being able to try to give this community the support it needs. When I started here in 1988, when Carrie Crouch and Dave Rand had this vision that we needed a youth services director, this was the vision that this community had way ahead of other communities. And I think we continue to grow with that. And having the support from you and the relationship we have with the school department is second to one. And I know that will continue with Dr. Gilligan taking over. But I think North Andover is really a model for what we're trying to do in these areas.
Do you feel comfortable if we dive in to a
Yeah,
slide
sure,
or two?
sure.
Because there was one that jumped out because you laid out, like slide 19 lays out the perception of services, which is offerings, and it's North Andover provides enough activities and programs for its youth, and parents responded whether they felt it was never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always. And then 2 slides later, it jumps into the actual response based on school district, and it's just a dramatic jump from Thompson School, which really is not even a 2 in its assessment of that, to the Franklin School District, which is the highest response, which is over a 4. And I was just wondering, is that skewed because in one school's case, not as many parents and students necessarily responded, and it's skewed because maybe a handful.
So we spent some time
tilted?
talking about this, and this is something the school department's going to be very interested in when you look at your districting of your schools. But the reality was a lot of that had to do with we got more response with some of the focus groups with certain schools than others. And I think all of our schools were pretty responsive on what we were looking to do, but others, we've always known like the Franklin and Sargent are more probably ahead of it a little bit in terms of, wanting to know more what's going on or whatever. But I thought they did a decent job on that. But again, we look at our community, and the whole community we're changing as a community. Geographically, there's a lot of different issues that we deal with in different parts of the town. And that's changing a lot too, even with, a number of our new residents living out in the Berry Street area with the new plate, and that is bringing in a whole different, the amount of differences we have in both economics and race at the youth center on any given day is pretty interesting compared to what it used to be. So again, I think it's calculating all this information and really kind of digesting it and see how we're going to actually deal with all of that.
I mean, I'm sure it's a helpful data point for many people in the school system to look at that, but it just I didn't know if it was an aberration just because it jumps right back up for the middle school and high school, which
Right.
naturally pulls kids from
Everything
the
that's,
Thompson.
everybody's together,
So,
yeah.
Really, I mean, I find it really fascinating, all of it, and that was just one slide I had questions about.
I do want to give Merrimack College some credit under this with Andrew's assistance, bringing our college, it's in our community, obviously, to them rally around it, the fact that they gave a third of the involvement in financially investing into that. And I do think Dr. Kirkle did a really nice job of putting this together. And the focus groups and the communities that got involved, we had a number of businesses get involved with, we actually had food at some of the focus groups and things like that. So I thought it was a real community involvement to get this done. Something that, I'll be honest with you, I think we should do every 5 years or so. I don't think this is something we just rest on our laurels here and say, well, this is what we did in 2018. I think, 5 years from now, we should take a look at this, because I think, as we're hearing all tonight, as our community's changing constantly.
It'd be interesting to see how these numbers change 5 years from now.
Exactly.
The one thing that kind of struck me is sort of what Andrew was saying earlier about how town services are changing away from the bricks and mortar. If you look at the barrier to services, which is really from the parent's perspective.
Correct.
If you look at transportation in my schedule, and I bet you a chunk of my schedule is transportation, 2/3 of the barriers to services relate to getting there.
Right. So that became a
Right.
big discussion point for us, to the point where I haven't approached it with the town manager yet, but we need to take probably a look at how we get. So the thing is, the school department's been great. If you're at the middle school,
Yep.
and your bus is coming through the old center, you're okay to stop at the youth center. So all those buses coming this way, they're getting here. The problem is getting them home.
Right.
We've thought about, do we have a shuttle at 5:30, 6 o'clock to get people home? But transportation is a problem. Now take the people that aren't coming through the youth center, downtown, Mass Ave, Woodridge, and a lot of kids that we would obviously even want there. We've got to figure a way to get them there. So the schedule becomes the other thing. So again, we're in a community with many of our parents are two-parent families that cannot drive their kids there. So it is that came loud and clear that we need to address that, and how are we going to address that with working with the parents on the whole thing. I don't think we're investing in getting a youth center bus that's going to go around town, but a few years ago we experimented with something with the school department that had a bus that dropped off at the youth center, the YMCA, back to the school, and that's something maybe with our bus company we should take a look at, because transportation was loud and clear that we need to address.
Well,
With the MVRTA.
Correct.
We decided to get less use over time. That's why I was just continued. The other thing I noticed was that there's also a coordination of programs here that seems to come through loud and clear. And we have programs in multiple different venues, not forcing folks, but making folks sort of make decisions and getting from one venue to the next, because it may not just be the youth center. It may be an activity happening at one school and not at another school, or two different schools. And my child wants to go to this particular program at this school, but I'm normally at this school. And so I think the coordination of our youth, certainly the youth center is at the epicenter of that, but I think the coordination of all programs around our different venues is also.
So we're working with Rick Gallant from the school department to try to take a look at that whole piece. But here's we come full cycle. In 1988, we ran programs out of 18 different sites in town. We then said we had to build a home. So in 2000, we built a home. But quite frankly, we now need to go to the site. So get away from the bricks and mortar that Andrew was talking about. Like, I'm using the Berry Street development as an example. That's on the outside of town. If those kids don't get here, what can we do to maybe go there? In the past, we've experimented with maybe doing something at Woodridge or with Woodridge. We used to run for the Grogan's Park area, the Veterans Housing. We used to open up the old shed down there and ran an after-school program. So I think what we're thinking about is the youth center is still going to be the center point, but I think we need to get out to the different parts of the communities. And that was, to me, that was loud and clear in this results.
I think I read out of it. The interesting thing is so I was on the YMCA board so very recently.
Correct.
And there's a kind of growing talk about the issue of kids getting there. And so they're at the same challenge point. Remember, that facility is 3 times the size it was 2
sure.
years ago, right?
Yeah,
So we know the
beautiful.
scope of it. And there's certainly some opportunity for interlocking program development, really on both sides. So I would think you might find some very great receptivity with
Well, we have,
Gary
so
and the
Frank
board.
Keneally,
Keneally,
CEO
right,
for the Y, is
right.
obviously the head of the Joseph N. Herman Youth Center Committee for a couple of months. We've started a podcast at the Youth Center, so he was actually one of our guests, and one of the things we actually talked about was networking the Merrimack Valley. In that beautiful site, which is obviously the Andover, North Andover Y, but it's, obviously half in our community, is a place that we're gonna start collaborating. We've actually been doing some things with them. We're doing something with the Lawrence Y too. But again, I think going back to Andrew's original point, we used to have that bus, and again, it lost use. I think we need to revisit that.
Yes.
And to see how we can collaborate programs where a youth center program might be run at the Y.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
Well, they used to have what was called a late bus, and it would just, if you stayed for practice or whatever, there would be a late bus that would make the rounds and drop all the kids off.
With my final meeting with Jen Price before she leaves, that's gonna be one of the things we're gonna really address. Because I do wanna say that our school department is on board with anything we wanna try to do to meet the needs. Because again, it's the same kids, right? Her kids are the same kids that we're dealing with.
Awesome, Rick, awesome.
Thank you for coordinating this.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I staying for Stevens Pond or coming back?
I was gonna pick them up from Stevens Pond.
Thanks, we can jump.
Yeah.
That was
Do
a,
a head break.
that was a
What's that?
good catch.
I'm here once again to ask the Board of Selectmen to set the fees for Stevens Pond again. You have the full recap that we do every year, along with giving you obviously an update in terms of all the renovations we've done, obviously since 2008. Our staffing, our great work with our great Department of Public Works. We are on schedule to have the weed removal done. John Boyjazi is taking care of that. That'll be done before it. We are on top of the blue-green algae issue we had a number of years ago. I'm very proud to say in 3 years, we've only been closed 1/2 of one day for any kind of an E. coli high reading. So that's a tribute to, obviously, our DPW and the water treatment in terms of having our great water quality down there. We've had a great staff. Kelly Ray has been my director. She's a teacher. She's been our director for a number of years, started out there as a lifeguard and continues to do a great job on the day-to-day operation on that. We're taking it to a new level this year. Last year when I was talking to you about it, we've got a few things. We're trying to get some of the older kids there. We're actually going to be we have a grant that we feel confident in receiving that's going to provide us 4 kayaks and 4 canoes to be down there at the pond. We're also working with Sapio, which is a company that does paddle boards, that's going to actually do a couple of things for parents and a couple of things for kids down there. So we're trying to just offer more activities down there that it is, I keep calling it the jewel of North Andover. It's been there forever. Rosemary learned to swim there. But it's been a great thing for our community. I think the way the building, the renovations we've done, pretty proud of what it looks like down there and the product we put out there. Get great feedback from our residents every year, and we're always looking to take it to the next step. So as every year I come in with the proposed fees, again, my goal as the Youth Services Director is to make this a totally self-sufficient program. So you will see my proposal puts us in that situation. We are increasing every year, getting closer to that mark that we're looking at. So if you look at what my proposal fees were, upgrading from last year's fees, as always, this board will decide whether they will increase the fees or not.
Can I just ask one question
Sure.
about the kayaks? And are you looking to have a section for that where you would pay like $10 to
So
go
we're
out in
going
a
to start out
kayak
the
for
first year, we're starting out slow and seeing if this takes off or whatever. So it will be managed by our staff down there. They will be able to take it out for a playtime. Eventually, I look at that up near my lake up in New Hampshire.
Echo Lake.
Where, yeah, actually,
And
Echo Lake.
It's almost the exact same.
It is the thing. They pay $10 an hour, and they have paddle boards and a few other things. But that would be my ultimate goal, which would also generate some money.
I
We
think
want
it's
to
really
see how it takes off first. And remember, Stevens Pond is not Echo Lake in terms of size
Yeah,
and
and
things
it's
like
not run by
that.
the
We need to
state,
be able to
yeah.
manage the swimming lessons and everything else there.
I think it's a great idea, though.
Year, would you charge for it?
We are not.
Just trial.
It's trial. Hoping to get the grant. That's the first thing.
So just going through the passes, so season car passes, somebody gets a sticker, the sticker goes to that car.
Yes.
swimming lessons, they pay that per season?
Correct. I
Daily
might
adult-
add, that is the best swimming
Is
lesson
that per
price, by
student
the
or
way.
per family? Is that a per student?
For the swimming lesson?
Yeah.
It's individual, yeah.
Individual,
And
okay.
it's 2 terms,
So what about
Two,
for
yeah, 2 4-week sessions.
yeah.
daily adult passes? Is that somebody who doesn't have a car
So
pass?
there's people that choose not to get a permit, and we tried to do the math with some people, where they're just, it's a $12 daily fee, and, you know, if they come twice during the summer, it makes sense to get the daily pass. If you're actually coming 6 times, then you need to start doing the math and saying that the permit is better, but we've always had the daily fee allowed.
And then season pass nonprofit, every year there's always one. I just can't remember what the.
Yeah, so we have Little Sprouts is our for-profit one, and Edgewood is our nonprofit one. That's why it's one. We've never had any more requests than that.
An additional sticker is if you're in a
So
two-car
additional
household.
sticker is $20, and that's usually for a family who may have the nanny watching the kids, bringing them in their car, or the husband has the second, so the second car.
And we've kept these the same, and if you look, the projections seem to be, I mean, we subsidize this, but it's at a very modest rate. I mean, I have no problem continuing with the fees the way they are, with the exception perhaps of daily adult passes as a way to just encourage people to go more towards the seasonal pass. And the dollar's pretty modest.
Yeah, I
You're
would
saying
definitely
you-
like to see, keep the swimming lessons at 50. I think those,
Absolutely.
we've always spoken in the past, those are important. And you don't want to discourage people from not taking them because of the price amount of.
And it kind of ties it to what Rick's been saying. I mean, we have kids that really need some activities and might not have the means to do it, so you like to keep the fees low. And I know you would do something accordingly if there was a family really in need. But
Yeah, to be clear on that, we've done a big push of getting senior citizens to use Stevens Pond. Also, we talk about getting more kids there and the older kids, but senior citizens, and as you notice, the $35 fee for that's been well received. We always put into place, it's not written, if there's a financial need.
Yeah.
If there's, quite frankly, we have 98 kids on scholarship at the youth center right now. If there's a family that flat out cannot play, and, you know, they provide the same information they provide us to the youth center, then we would make no
And
kids.
that's the right
We want to
thing.
have, we don't want anybody turned away due to
Right.
inability to pay, and we make that
No, we want them
work.
to learn to swim. We want them to have a vacation, even if it's in their own town. You know, that's some people's summer vacation is doing the activities in town, which is great. And
So if the board has some interest in change fees because you want to steer people in a certain direction, certainly I'll call. As it relates to raw numbers, there is no pressing need to want to change the figures.
Mr. Chair, I hope that we keep this the same for all the reasons that we all just stated, that it's a great program and we want our residents engaged in good, healthy behavior and fun activities. So I would move that we keep them the same. It's a quality of life issue for the town, for our townspeople. And sometimes we just have to take care of it.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion? I personally have no problem subsidizing this. I do think that we could, I mean, if you wanted to lay out the economics in the future of why we should try to steer people towards season car passes, which I think are fairly obvious as a way to discourage just the daily passes. It allows you to budget too, because if there are bad days, those people then choose not to show up, and all of a sudden the 460 people.
Sure.
They
I
get
mean,
that
obviously,
day
the
pass.
board sets the fees. You know, to be clear, as always, in Andrew's predecessor, I've always been charged with trying to come up with a plan that would make it totally self-sufficient. One thing that's been encouraging from this board and what we're doing is we're inching closer. I think some of the things we're hoping to do down there might even have more people down there. So we may be looking at, when I come down next year, we may be saying we don't need to, we're at the level we're at. But obviously, whatever you guys decide.
I think that grant program could eventually move into closing that gap. I really do. People, for anyone who's been to Echo Lake up in New Hampshire,
Sure.
those boats are used all the time.
Absolutely.
So motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of keeping the fees the same as the FY 2018? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none? Rick, thank you
Great.
for your
Just want to
patience.
also point out to our Department of Public Works, they do an unbelievable job. Couldn't do it without them in terms of getting it ready, maintaining it through the summer, and helping us shut down. So we're looking forward. We'll be open. School gets out a little bit later, but we will be open the third week of June, and we'll be there until the late third week of August. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Since we entered consent items, I wanted to ask the chief if the chief would be so kind to defer, given that we are at 8:30. We have several students from our school system that have patiently been waiting. I don't think we expected to dive so deep, and since we dove already into consent, the chief is nodding, so I would ask the board to let us jump to item A under consent items, which is a vote to proclaim the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day. And this was a request where Dr. Gilligan had reached out on behalf of the student body here at North Andover High School. And we have Caitlin Parks joining us this evening. And I'm sorry, I know that it's Caitlin because Caitlin's been a driver. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves,
Of course.
your address, and letting us know about this program.
Great. Thank you for having us. My name is Caitlin Parks. I'm a junior at North Andover High School.
My name is Jocelyn Avila, and I'm a senior at North Andover High School.
And we're here to talk about Race Amity Day, and we would like to ask the town of North Andover to adopt Governor Baker's proclamation declaring the second Sunday of every June Race Amity Day. I was one of the few students lucky enough to attend the Race Amity Conference in Boston, selected through the high school. And on the bus ride home from that conference, the group of us, we were discussing what we learned, and we realized how inspired we all were and that we wanted to create this day. So this year, Race Amity Day is on June 10th, and North Andover Public Schools and the Stevens Memorial Library are working to create an event at the high school. That would include a potluck, dancing, music, a Race Amity movie, a photo walk, and an art exhibit. And I've got homework, so I'll keep this quick. But I did want to say that I'm so proud to be a kid in times like today. Just this year, I've been able to attend the Women's March. My family did the March for Our Lives, and now I'm able to be a part of planning Race Amity Day. And before I hand it over to Jocelyn, I wanted to say thank you for being one of the communities that allows us to use our voices.
Alrighty, so I'm here to talk about why Race Amity Day would be significant to the town. So, which is why I'm going to start speaking about why this is going to be significant to somebody like me. So, like I said before, I am a senior at North Andover High School. I lived in North Andover for about 9 years of my life. I moved from Wisconsin, so it was a big change in states, coming from Wisconsin to Massachusetts. I had to face many differences, speaking as moving into a different state. I had to face that, had to face a new change, new school system. I went from private school to public school. I went to North Andover Middle School. So I had to face many changes. One of the most significant changes I had to face was the fact that since I am Hispanic, I'm Latina, I am not just like everybody else. So I had to understand and go through that situation myself. So usually when you are of something, or if you are more comfortable with people who you surround yourself with, you usually cling on to people who are similar to you. And that is why I made a big group of friends in North Andover that are most similar to who I am. I realized going to North Andover that there is many people of different ethnicities, different cultures in this town, which is amazing. There's so many opportunities to meet so many different people. And that's why I think it's important that we have a day like Race Amity Day to showcase all the different cultures we have in this town. Because even though North Andover is primarily Caucasian, there is, like I said, many different cultures that we can enjoy in this town that many people don't realize we have. So moving forward from the Race Amity Day, how to make this everyday situation, because I think it's important to embrace cultures, not just for one day, but every single day that we have here and we live in this town, to make this place a better place. I believe that I'm trying to engage with students who are still going to attend the high school in the years to come, since I am leaving this year, to make a club to have enjoy many different cultures, bring food, music, to have everyone enjoy different cultures that we have in the high school. Hopefully, we're going to do it in North Andover Reads, I believe so, for the years to come, just to engage and showcase what we have in North Andover. So that is basically what I wanted to say. No problem.
Thank you very much.
And maybe we can sign something for them to get, a little bit of leniency tomorrow. So we do have a proclamation, and the board, I think, in order to make this declaration, would make a vote. So I would hear motion, and if our clerk, if you would
Sorry.
want to read, and then we can present it, but
Should I make the motion first or read this? I don't know the rules.
I think
I
that,
will move that the Board of Selectmen proclaim the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day.
And I'll second that.
motion made by Selectman Keen and seconded by Selectman Smedili, and Selectman Keen will read into the record the proclamation.
Okay.
Ms. Clerk.
Whereas North Andover supports the Great Seal of the United States of America, which bears the inscription E Pluribus Unum, which translates from Latin as out of many, one. And whereas the greatest asset of the town of North Andover is its people. And whereas the town of North Andover is comprised of multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multiracial citizens. And whereas friendship, collegiality, civility, respect, and kindness are commonly shared ideals of the collective citizenry of the town of North Andover. And whereas the Towards E Pluribus Unum initiative has invited communities across the United States of America to join in introspection and reflection on the beauty and richness of the diverse peoples of this great nation, while reaching out with a spirit of amity towards one another annually on the second Sunday in June. And whereas H 2745, Chapter 163 of the Acts of 2015 of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts establishes the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day. And whereas on March 23, 2017, His Excellency Charles D. Baker, Governor of Commonwealth of Massachusetts, declared the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day, and urged all the citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observation. Now therefore, the North Andover Board of Selectmen do hereby proclaim the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day, as a day of introspection and reflection on the beauty and richness of the diverse peoples of this great nation, while reaching out with a spirit of amity towards one another. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the town of North Andover to be affixed this 30th day of April in the year 2018.
So we will pretend I didn't already sign it, but in preparation. So motion made and seconded, and we just heard the proclamation. Any discussion?
Thank you guys, great job tonight.
Very good.
Thank
For
you.
your
Very proud
patience.
of you.
Thank you for having us, by the way.
So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we've unanimously declared the second Sunday in June annually as Race Amity Day. Thank you, ladies, for your work. Now, I would like to give this to you, and I'm sure that we can have this stored over at the school administration building too for the records kept there. So here you ladies go, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, now, Chief Gray with traffic, data, and speed limits. He got excited. We said they could leave like 2 hours ago, and then he came back in.
I think you love the old IT update, so that was.
The rate
Actually, I
update.
can't complain, because part of the stuff we're talking about right now is a direct result of what Chris has done. So a while back, I was called, and we talked about speed analysis in town. One of the sort of laws that changed was given the ability of the town to set speed limits to a lower rate if deemed necessary. In order to do so, we had to go out and gather data, as the town manager always likes to say, and find out what exactly we should be, looking for. So we purchased some traffic boxes that are really unique. They not only get the speed of the vehicles, they give the size of the vehicles, they give an hour-by-hour analysis. It gives a percentile as to what's the average speed, what's the percentile, it's called the 85th percentile, where anything over that is in essence, what you want to watch for. And the traffic study is ongoing. At this time, we see the commuting routes, Mass Ave, Salem Street, Johnson Street, Chestnut Street, as the areas of focus, because we do get some complaints from the residents. But like I said, what's unique is it allows us to deploy resources. When I first started on the job, you got your cruiser assignment, you got your area of town to cover, and you got a selective enforcement to do. And whether you did it at 8 in the morning or noontime, as long as it got done, what we're finding is we need to focus on the commuting hours on certain streets. On other streets, we have to focus on school drop-off pickup. We have to focus on pedestrian corridors. So the study is ongoing. We haven't found any anomalies yet. that's going to, there's a couple of areas that we're working on. Like I said, we're deploying resources certain times of the day to put the cruisers out there to be at least a visible presence to slow the cars down. We have a lot of aggressive young officers that are out there that are more than, willing to go out there and get, interact with the public. But we're finding that we need to make sure that we're doing quality motor vehicle stops for quality violations, and when citations are warranted, they're issued, and we're following up on the courts. We're also using these for areas of town where we've had a bad accident, say. And in one particular area of town, we had a very serious accident with a lot of injuries, and immediately the upcry was, we need this, we need that, we need a traffic light, we need a detail 24/7. What we found was, after putting the traffic boxes up there, it was just an anomaly. It was just a freak occurrence that happened, and when you look at the numbers and look at the figures and the traffic count, you see that it was just a bad accident, and that's all it was. So the study is ongoing. I'm working with the IT department. We have a nice dashboard we're using to gather the data and compile it. The past 3 weeks, we've been working on Mass Ave, given the project with, the Chickering Road. We actually divided it into 3 parts, from the old center to 125, from 125 to Waverly Road, and then from Waverly Road to the Lawrence line, to really see what kind of traffic we're getting on that street, just because of this upcoming project that's been green lighted. So that's where we're at right now.
Just to the technology, the chief done a really great job, and staff has done a great job along with Chris. So in the past, you would have been used to sort of a strip across the road, which gathered really very two-dimensional data. It wouldn't have given you a lot of interactive data. There was no graphs and charts. There was no information that really jumped off the page and told you a story. So you had to really sort of get down into the the dirt in terms of trying to understand that data, and therefore it became less useful to folks. Today, that data is picked up electronically. There are no cords along the road. It sits in place. The driver doesn't realize it's there, and therefore it captures data. It gets uploaded into the cruiser live time. We actually, a couple of us have it on our desktop. We see it as it's updated, so that we can check and look at data in a way that helps the chief and his staff. As he said, it's an allocation of resource issue. The average person drives faster than the speed limit on every road. I think if we start with that premise, which is probably factually accurate, I'll speak for myself, then we start to look at those places where the resource allocation makes the most sense. We have sector cars. We have a very large geographic community. Those sector vehicles have a lot to do and a lot to juggle. So the goal is to take the resources of those officers and focus them as strategically as possible. The chief is working diligently to do that with his staff with the data that we have now available to us. And so when there is that kind of call, we can move the equipment, capture the data, and determine whether or not it's an anomaly or, quite frankly, if it's a regular pattern. And most of the data I think we're seeing is, I think you could probably tell me what the data is without the technology, but the technology does help, not as much on the arterial roads, because we know that people drive fast, sometimes on those side streets to understand if there's something happening that's not common. So the PD is working aggressively and using technology in a way to make sure that they have the data and allocating the resources in cases where it's pretty clear that there's a regular pattern or problem. And so I think the new technology is helpful. I think we need to continue to use it to find out how best to utilize it, but it's really helping the PD track the information and decide where to deploy resources appropriately.
So at some point, I wanted to have discussion about whether or not it warrants reducing the speed limit on certain roads. Is that something that you will give us your opinion at some point?
Sure.
Like after you've collected a certain amount of data, you
Sure.
can give us your recommendation as
Absolutely.
to whether that would be helpful or not. I'd be interested to know. I mean, if cars just typically stay 10 miles above the speed limit or something, then reducing the speed limit would at least bring them down 10 miles an hour. I mean, I don't know.
In theory, yeah.
I don't know
Right.
what they're doing, but I guess
Yeah.
you're right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess that's where, when we asked for this data, that's where I was coming from with the request, was to answer, does it make sense to reduce the speed limit on some of these roads where we have
And again, we
a lot
want
of
to try to
speeding?
gather a lot because, let's say, for example, we reduce the speed on Johnson Street 10 miles an hour. Well, now we're going to force the traffic. We don't want to go that slow to Salem Street and Chestnut Street.
Yeah.
So now it's not so much fixing the problem, it's forcing it somewhere else. So we want to look at all that stuff before we make a
Yeah.
decision to go ahead and, on certain streets, or maybe all of them.
Really great example of that, to your point as well, is, and it goes to the enforcement piece. If you look at Johnson's, an interesting road in terms of traffic. We have a school, we have a windy road, we have a cut-through road, We have soccer fields and
Yeah.
playgrounds. It's a really interesting road in terms of collecting the activity and what it means, right? It's a very dynamic space. And interesting enough, through those, a street like that, the question is, we would expect heavy traffic in the morning and the evening, and we also expect certain types of activity. The question is, in a place like Johnston is, even if people travel 2, 3, 4, 5 miles over the speed limit, which is fairly common, the question is what's happening during those times when we have school crossing there? What's happening during those times when there's active soccer practices on those? And that's what I mean, and the chief identifies as allocation of resource. If he knows at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock soccer is happening there, and yet it's a time where there's heavy commuters and people are rushing to get home, that combination of having a lot of people and kids along that roadway with the fact that people are going home allows them to focus the resource to address on that, where speed limit change may very well be warranted. I'm not dismissing that. But having a police officer there to monitor that has a stronger rebuffing effort as it relates to people speeding than just the speed limit
Yeah.
change, as you know, because being pulled over is a scary proposition. So I think that's the sophistication the PD is heading toward, is the ability to not just narrow it to roadways, but the times on those roadways where those resources can really help us make a difference. And I think they're doing a fantastic job.
That makes sense.
And that's exactly what we've been doing, is what he just said.
Yeah.
For your patience tonight, Chief.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
Thank you, always a pleasure. Thank you again.
All right, next up, we're jumping down to item C, and this is Mr. Coakley from the North Andover Athletic Association for Nights on the Run. I don't know if we have him here. It's pretty straightforward. We do it every year.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt, seconded by Selectman Smedili. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes. Good luck to the guys at Nights on the Run. We will, next item, Columbia Gas requests permission to excavate on Hillside Road for the purpose of replacing the gas main.
Just under communications, can I be ever so brief?
I did jump right to it, but yes, you could absolutely.
You know what, let him go.
Okay.
He's been patient.
I appreciate it. My name is Louis DeRoxas. I'm a field engineer with Columbia Gas, and I'm here on behalf of the company to discuss and answer questions on our Hillside Road project that we've proposed. Has everyone had a chance to review the project at all? So essentially, the scope for this project is to excavate about 760 feet on Hillside Road between Route 125 and the Andover town line. The project will start in Andover and will basically run through Highland Road, and then as soon as you hit the town line at North Andover, it turns into Hillside Road. So the plan is that there's currently an existing 6-inch steel main that runs on Highland Road between 125 and the Andover town line. That main is located in, there are wetlands in the area, so when it was installed in just prior to 1970, you can kind of guess that a 50-year-old steel pipe near wetlands, it's prone to corrosion and poor conditions just in general. So Columbia Gas is hoping to replace this main to prevent any future leaks or excavation in this road. There will be about 8 affected services, which should not be an issue. Any questions?
So what if you're one of the 8 affected services?
Sorry, say again?
So what if you're one of those 8?
So we will have an inspector on site, a gas inspector with our company, who will be making appointments with every customer that is in the scope of this project in order to determine exactly how the service will be affected, if it would need to be tied over to the new main that's being installed, or if it needs to be replaced completely. And if it does need to be replaced, Columbia Gas, we try to restore the lawn, all conditions back to how they originally were.
Okay, one other question. So how long do you think this is going to take to do? It's not a long stretch.
Right, essentially, yeah. So the project will start in Andover, and we would finish in North Andover. So the scope of our crew being in North Andover should be about 15 days, give or take, weather conditions and rough digging conditions. But it shouldn't take more than three working weeks.
And are you aware of the degree of cut-through traffic that goes through that street?
Yes, absolutely. So because of the location of our main, it is located, if you are heading south on Hillside towards Andover, we are in the shoulder. So we will have police detail helping with the flow of traffic.
On the south side heading into...
Exactly, yeah. It'll be, if you're heading south, it'll be on the right side, basically in the shoulder. So we will have police detail, or at least we're planning to have police detail for the entire duration of the project to help with flow of traffic, but we should also not need to close any roads down. Everything should still flow easily.
And so getting in and out, if you're one of those 8 affected?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So
I know some neighbors.
Of course. So with the police detail there, they should not have any issues leaving their driveways or entering their driveways throughout the day.
I'll just tell you, it is a madhouse at certain times of the day. Got to be prepared. I mean, traffic is backed up to the Andover line.
Yep.
As is. And people whip around that corner, so just...
Understood, yes.
Be prepared.
We'll make sure that we go over all the details with the police on site as well.
Cool.
Yep.
And when do you plan on doing this?
Basically, as soon as we have kind of permission from the board, we'll start mobilizing crews to make sure that we're ready. This should start and finish this year, this construction season.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion for approval? Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if you just look at your package quickly, if you notice at the last page 6 and 7 of your package, that's the example of the online permitting system. So you're seeing who's reviewing it, the time they're reviewing it and approving it, and any notes. So on page 7, there's a note from Lieutenant Lannon about the details. So it gives you a sense of what's changed from individual emails exchanges, which you've got in the past, to the process we now see from an electronic perspective that Chris was talking about.
So in my eagerness to jump ahead of the meeting, I did skip the end of the communications where Selectman Smedili did have an announcement she'd like to make.
Yeah.
And so I'll extend the courtesy.
So quick, I am the president of the North Andover Women's Club, a very old establishment that's been around over 80 years. I was not one of the original members, if you were wondering. So we're having a kind of a fun new fundraiser for scholarships for North Andover students. And the fundraiser is, would you like to fly a flock of flamingos on to one of your friends? So the committee will put all these flamingos, it could start with 12, can go up to even as many as 48 or so, for a fee of $25 and a sign. And then what you're supposed to do is then fly them to another person's property. So it's just fun, it's silly, but it's a great way to raise money for scholarships. And this is done by the North Andover Women's Club, and we do have a corporate sponsor and someone who's greatly helping us, and that's Berkshire Hathaway Varani, and they will also be helping us. And for further information, please call 978-475-4411. It's just a fun, silly project to raise money for scholarships. So we hope you will all consider participating. And it's already been talked about to the chief, so you might want to take one of these gentlemen to pass along for roll call, so that when people call and say there are flamingos all over my front yard, you can tell them why. So it's not college kids having fun. So no, it's. So anyways, that's it. Thank you.
And we can suspend the rest of communication till towards the end, so that way we can be courteous to our guests. So Diane Flahive of the Neurofibromatosis Northeast requires permission to use streets in North Andover for the Coast to the Cure bike ride on Saturday, September 8th, 2018. And we do have in our packet a report from our police, fire, and public works departments, all placing no conditions on the approval for this. And so they're asking specifically to use Salem, Ingalls, Forest, Boxford, Foster, Winter, and Dale Streets for this ride, and the race starts at 7 a.m. in Gloucester. Is Ms. Flahive saying aye? Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Good luck, folks. Next item on the agenda is we have a request from the Patriotic Observance Committee to close Mass Ave and Salem Street from the Town Common to Ridgewood Cemetery for the annual Memorial Day Parade on Monday, May 28th, starting at 10 a.m. Self-explanatory.
We'll move approval of this unless there's someone here to speak to it, but if not, I'm going to move approval to it.
No, the approval is great. It's what people expect every year, and we always try to make it something interesting and memorable, not memorial, but memorable, thank you. And I think we have a nice event planned for the people of North Andover.
So, motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are ready for Memorial Day. So we have a request from Donald Slater for permission to document old burial ground. And so is Donald here?
Dr. Slater sent me an email this afternoon saying he had a commitment at Phillips Academy and couldn't make it this evening.
Thank you, Ray. And so we have in our document, in our agenda, if you were to pull it up, all the background information. And I would entertain a motion.
I would move approval. This is a great project.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Dr. Slater.
Dr. Slater has invited members of the board to come visit in the fall with the students and find some interesting experiences at the old burying ground.
Thanks, Ray. So,
Just interesting, yes.
so next item on the agenda is we have 4 names: Shannon Clark for our Cultural Council, Todd Wakeman for the Festival Committee, Linda Ermo for Emergency Management, and Ashley Valencourt for the Festival Committee, all appointments that have been submitted by the Appointment Subcommittee. And so I will defer to my colleagues.
This week, it continues to be kind of one of the high points, which is just meeting all these very engaging, interesting, and really expertised folks. And that's what's kind of, they all kind of match up so nicely. So really appreciate that each one of these folks comes in with good experience, and we learn a lot of interesting things talking to people that want to help in emergency management, kind of expertise in certain fields. So we're happy to have them all aboard, and thank you.
I would move approval. It's a great group. Know a few of them.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. All in
So
favor?
I'll just make a declaration that Ashley is my daughter-in-law, so I'm going to vote in favor, but I just wanted to let people know that she is my daughter.
And there was no financial interest, right?
There's no
So Selectman
financial
Valencourt,
interest, no.
If anything, she may be very irritated with us for putting her on this committee. They do a lot of good work.
She's great.
She'll be busy.
Great.
So motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you to those 4 volunteers for stepping up and helping our community. So, next item on the agenda is licensing, so I'd entertain a motion to move to licensing.
Chair, motion to move into licensing?
Motion made by Selectman Smedili to move into licensing. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Keen. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We're in licensing.
Okay, we're now in licensing. So the first item we have in licensing is a hearing for a violation, an alleged liquor violation at Wine and Beer at the Andover's on March 16, 2018. I'll start out by reading the letter that was sent out to the management of the establishment on March 28th. Dear Mr. Bucco, the North Andover License Commission hereby notifies you and requests you to be present at a public hearing to be held on Monday, April 30th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the second floor meeting room at the North Andover Town Hall, 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass. regarding an alleged violation of North Andover Alcohol Beverages Regulations, Section 32, and the alcoholic beverages license issued under Section 12 of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, to Yekshil LLC, DBA Wine and Beer at the Andover's, William Bucco, manager. This violation relates to the alleged incident described in the attached incident report, which occurred at your establishment on March 16, 2018 at approximately 5:30 p.m. As stated in the report, the violation is pursuant to 204 CMR 2.052, permitting an illegality on a licensed premises, to wit, Chapter 138, Section 34, sale or delivery of an alcoholic beverage to a person under 21 years of age, an alleged violation of Section 32 of the North Andover Alcoholic Beverage Regulations. At this hearing, you have the right to have counsel present may have witnesses testify on your behalf, and you will be entitled to question witnesses as a result of testimony to be given that night. The action of the commissioners could result in a warning, suspension, revocation, or modification of your license. Sincerely, Richard Valancourt, Licensing Commissioner. So just as way a process for a hearing of this nature, only the board members, town council, and license holder or his counsel should be allowed to ask questions. We'll go through a process. Actually, I probably should, first of all, announce that this hearing is opened. I've read the notice. We will then recognize the officers. But just as way of process, only board members, town council, and license holder or his counsel should be allowed to ask questions. No questions or comments from the public will be allowed, okay? So we'll go to, we have 2 investigating officers tonight, so we'll have them read their accounts of that evening, or the incident.
Good evening. I know some familiar faces, but if you don't know me, I'm Detective Gilligan with the North Andover Police Department. This is my partner, Detective Michael Reed. So what I'll do is I'll just give you the statement of facts of that evening. On March 16, 2018, Detective Reed and myself were conducting surveillance at the North Andover Mall, 350 Winthrop Avenue, and we were in an unmarked unit. Approximately 5:30 p.m., detectives observed to observe younger-looking males walking into the Wine and Bear at the Andover liquor store. I followed the males into the store and observed the 2 males placing large quantities of alcohol into 2 separate shopping carts. I actually went outside. I notified Detective Reardon of my observations. The 2 males identified as James Murphy and Connor Stahl purchased the alcohol and walked out of the store. Detectives stopped Murphy and Stahl and asked if they could produce proper identification. At first, they denied having any, and then they did produce some. When Murphy was asked what his age was, he stated he was 18, and he handed over a New York driver's license, which was his actual physical license. When Stahl was asked for his age, he stated 19, and he handed Detective Reardon a false ID out of Pennsylvania. Murphy had a receipt on him totaling $283 worth of alcohol. Stahl had a receipt totaling $108. Receipts and alcohol were taken as evidence. Murphy and Stahl were placed into custody and transported back to the North Andover Police Station. I re-entered the store and spoke with the cashier. The cashier's name was Tara Stanovich. She stated both males have come into the store approximately 6 different occasions. I had asked her if she had carded them in the past, and she stated she had carded them the first 2 times, but she didn't feel the need to keep carding them. So we took that statement from her. Both of them were charged with possession of, minors being in possession of alcohol. Sure.
Why do we redact the names in the report that's provided to the board when?
They're public knowledge, so I don't know. They're adults. I mean, they're not juveniles.
Yeah, well, that's what I figured too.
Yeah.
I feel like this isn't the first time, and I just realized you said the names publicly anyways, and so why redact them? I'm just, again, looking at the report that was provided to us.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I often wonder the same thing.
Me too.
It may just be the nature of the charge, would it be a minor in possession of alcohol? It might have just been a clerical issue.
Okay.
Okay, are there any, Detective Reardon, were you going to add anything additional to what was said? Nope, okay. So are any questions for the officers? Any other questions for the officers, the detectives?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay, other witnesses for the town. I mean, this is kind of a unique case because there was a transfer of a license from one ownership to another during this period. We did ask the town council to go out and kind of review the timeline, which she did and provided for us in our package. Town council is here tonight. Are there any questions that anybody would have for town council based on the timeline that was provided with the license transfers?
Is there anything that she wants to say?
Oh, yep.
Good evening. I did provide a...
For the record, could you say?
Oh, I'm sorry, Suzanne Egan, Town Council. And I did provide the board with a timeline and the documents that are contained in the licensing clerk's file for this license that date back from the original license. As you can see, it's just essentially a timeline. It gives you the dates on which the license was initially issued. There's also the application for the transfer of the license. The licensing commission approved that transfer of the license, then it went to the ABCC, and then the ABCC approved that transfer of the license on March 15th of 2018, and the violation occurred on March 16th on 2018. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
So according, again, just to reiterate, according to the state, the license transferred on March 15th in the violation.
Exactly. That's the ABCC approved it on March 15th, and the license was issued from the licensing clerk, the Town of North Andover licensing clerk, and that is included in the packet that I provided you.
Any questions for the town council?
I don't think at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next, we'll ask the license holder, Mr. Bucco, if you, first of all, did you receive the notification of the hearing? Obviously, you did,
Yes, I
since you're here
did.
tonight. Okay. Do you stipulate to the facts as presented by the officers this evening?
Yeah, I agree with that. No doubt about it. I want to apologize for that, first of all. I'm sorry what my employee did. We're no longer there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I just want to say, if you guys know anything about what I do in town, particularly at McAloon's, we're pretty proactive with the police as far as IDs, checking. You know, I have the same ID system that police have, so in the past 8 years since I've got that system, we've turned over dozens, if not hundreds, of fake IDs, as well as minors, to the police. So in that case, we're very proactive. As a matter of fact, excuse me, I've got a call. I talked with Chuck Gray last week, and the police are in the process of getting a new system. And I told Chuck whatever system he gets, I want to get the same one at Macklem's, because their systems are usually pretty good, and I want to have that system. So again, I apologize for my employee. I let her go after that. It's not indicative of what we do. And so for that, I'm very sorry. Getting back to the license transfer, if I could for a minute, please. The license was transferred on that date, agreed. But the new owners, and I don't want to put this blame on the new owners, they did not take possession of the store till March 23rd. Reason being, first of all, we were waiting for a lease assignment transfer. Lou Minicucci and myself were still personally reliable for the lease, and until that lease was transferred, I wasn't going to let new owners go working on a lease that was in my name. So that's why we did not transfer that license until the following Friday, which was the 23rd. Also, whenever you do a retail sale, you're probably aware that you do an inventory before the new people take possession of the store. And here I have an inventory that we took on the 22nd, which was a Thursday. The following day, they took possession of the store. As well as I've got an invoice for that Friday when we had the violation, which was the 16th, I believe, where we had a delivery to the store, which was still in my name, Wine and Beer LLC, not Yakshil, I believe is which the new corporation is. So I just kind of want to set that record straight. I don't want these new owners to be liable for what happened when we were still owning the store. And if you need the paperwork, I've got it here. So that's my story, and like I said, I'm sorry. It bothers me, and I know you're concerned, but after 42 years in the business, I'm still concerned about it, and I will be for a while.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bucco? I mean, it's kind of a unique situation because we have one license that is no longer is no longer, but it was in transition to another ownership. So during that overlap, Mr. Bucco was still managing the store, and your staff was still managing the store prior to the new owners taking possession. So we kind of have to weed our way through this one and try to figure out what the best course of action is.
There's no dispute of the facts as far as this actually happened.
It was stipulated to, yeah, he stipulated to the facts.
There's no dispute in the facts that this actually happened. The disagreement
No, there's no dispute
is
there.
about who the license holder
See,
is.
like he said, I think this gal who worked for me had seen IDs before. She thought she knew them. Whether the IDs are good or not doesn't matter. And they weren't old enough to drink is the bottom line. So, but yeah, I don't dispute the facts.
And so this was an employee you had hired anyway. This was a holdover employee on that first day that the Yakshils technically would have been the license holders anyways. correct?
I'm not understanding what you're
Turn
saying.
the store over until the 23rd.
He didn't turn the store over, but as far as the license not existing, I mean, the point is this employee had worked at the store.
She had worked for me.
Yes.
Correct.
And so this was simply, I mean, technically this was
But
an
at
employee
the
their
time,
first
don't
day.
forget, we were still in charge of the store. That was on March 16th. The new owners did not take possession of the store until March 23rd, the following Friday. So it was on us, Louis Minicucci and myself, not on the new owners. That's why I don't want to see this go against them. I don't think it's fair that that should happen.
So you say you have ID readers, you have the one that the
At
police...
Macaroon's Liquors, I do it. Wine and beer,
but not at
I
this.
do not, because Macaroon's, I get a lot of college kids down there. It's kind of in mainstream of everything. Wine and beer, which is next to Market Basket, primarily it's the people who go to Market Basket, go to wine and beer for the most part, obviously not here, but that's why I didn't have it there. But Macaroon's is really where we focus on that, and that's where we work with the police constantly on that. And maybe I should have had one down there, but if she might have known if she saw the fake ID, but I'm talking about Macaroon's right now.
And the good thing is that this, I mean, even in this case, it was
Excuse
a
me?
matter of the IDs not being checked in the first place, right?
She did check IDs, I guess, according to what the officers said, and they did show her an ID previously to
And
that.
previously.
And when she got familiar with them, which is oftentimes the case, I know that at Macaroon's, for an example, if we can get an ID, we run it through the machine, which is a very good machine, and it says it's valid, and then we see it again and it's valid, and eventually you know the people, and you assume that it's to be valid, and you wait on them. And like I said, the machines we have are very good, and we're looking to upgrade.
And it sounds like we caught this in the middle of a not gray area where we're able to actually follow the timeline, but as far as the transition goes, and it was an employee, not the license holder that ended up performing the transgression, and that employee, I mean, do we have confirmation that the employee
Well, I let her go.
is no longer employed there?
No, I mean, no. Can't have it.
The thing that the only thing that's kind of troubling is that you're not supposed to use an out-of-state ID as a form of, so regardless, if you had the machine, it might have caught at least the fake one, but that's not an acceptable form. You could take it, but it's.
Well, that's
you
why
said
I
it's at
have
your
the
own
same
risk.
machine the police have at Macaroon's, which is, and they'll tell you, it's extremely accurate. And that's why I've had 100 fake IDs turned over to the police and minors as well, because it's the same one they have. You really can't fool it. And
But one of the individuals had their real out-of-state ID that identified them as a teenager anyways.
Excuse me?
Because we can
But
get...
they weren't asked for.
Yeah, but they didn't have the machine there.
But that machine
No, there
is,
was one
they weren't,
fake one
they
and
were...
one real one.
Your employee said that they had asked for it
She had
in a
asked for
prior
previously.
engagement. But I mean, there's...
But nonetheless,
She
it
should
was
have never
fake, I
taken it from the
believe.
beginning.
But even still, it said that they were under 21, so even if she
I
had
know.
accepted it, she was... I mean, the ID, this wasn't a fake ID, it was a real ID, and it said they were under 21.
I'm not defending it.
Yeah.
He's stipulated the facts, so there is no question about it.
So you have no interest in this, financial interest in this?
Right now?
Yes.
Of that store? Yes, I think when we came here for the license transfer back in January, I think I told you, I held on to 1% of the store.
Okay.
And I'll explain to you why, if you can follow me. We have in the liquor business something that's called cross accumulations of goods. In other words, for example, obviously like anything else, the more you buy, the cheaper you get it. So if there was a 50-case deal on a product, and this gentleman who I bought the store with has 3 or 4 or 5 other stores, so if he bought 50 cases between his stores, and let's say I wanted to buy 3 of those 50 at my store, I would get that 50-case deal, that price. So that's why I want to keep that 1%. That 1% allows me to buy with him.
Okay, buy with him, but you would use it at Macaroon.
Excuse me?
But would you use the product at Macaroon's? Is
I
that-
would get it dropped off at Macaroon's, legally dropped off at Macaroon's. But it would allow me to get the max deal because of the...
I get that part. But-
Because of
So
the-
your 1% in the 114 site would allow you to buy for your
For
125
Macaroon.
site?
Correct.
Interesting.
That's why I wanted, a part of the deal when I made it was I wanted that 1% because it mattered to me. Not that I have any interest as far as monetarily, money, profits, losses, I didn't want any of that. I just wanted that 1% for the cross accumulations.
This is really so complicated. I don't even know how to proceed.
I don't either. It's very complicated. I mean, I mean, in one way, you know, we could say, you know, the license was the license, and it was in the new possession of the new owners, but on the other hand, you know, they weren't even in the vicinity when they
I mean, look at it this way, the new corporation, which is Jack Schill, did not take possession until the 23rd of March. That would be the new owner, that would be the new corporation. Okay, the old corporation was myself and Lou Minicucci, which was Wine and Beer LLC, when the incident occurred. So they weren't involved at that time. Okay, the new corporation took over a week later.
May I ask town council, though? I understand what he's saying, but legally, what would you say legally is this?
Let's ask the council answer the question.
So legally, who would be responsible in this floating period?
So in order to sell alcohol and in order to operate a business, you need a license, right? And the person who is operating the business under that license would be responsible for the operation of that business. When the applicant, the new applicant applied for the transfer of license, the process went through the regulatory process, the Board of Selectmen or the licensing commissioners granted on the local level, and then the ABCC issued that license. Once that license is issued to a new owner, it's a transfer of the license, which means in order to transfer a license, it has to go from one person to the next. You can't have two people hold the same license at one time. And you can only operate a business with a license. So whoever is holding the license is the person who is operating the business.
Which is the
because it's a
new owner.
violation of the law to operate a business without the license. So it would be whoever is operating that business
Right.
on that day under the license.
So it would, in this particular case, it would be the new owner.
Sorry.
Even
Happens to me
though,
all the time.
even though he wasn't actively involved in the,
So the license was issued from the licensing clerk on March 15th, 2015, and it was given to them. And that's when the
Susan, when you say it was given to them, it was issued on March 15th. Were they aware that they had received it on March 15th?
Yes, and contained in your packet is an email correspondence between the licensing clerk and the new owner, Yakshil LLC representative, saying, here is your license, and that license, that particular license that was issued on that day was sent as an attachment. And then the response is, great, thank you, I'll come and pick it up. So that's the documents that we have that are in the file. And that's sort of what is there.
So the license, so the entity that holds the license is the new owners as of the 15th, the 16th when this transpired. So whoever is operating it physically in there is really an agent. Would it be fair to characterize them as an agent for the owners? Because the people who are operating it didn't hold the license in and of themselves, correct? I mean, the staff that was there was working on the behests of the new owners, but they didn't have the license.
But that's not true, because I was still paying the staff under Wine and Beer LLC, and I've got this invoice from the state, from the wholesaler, that still has on the 16th, the day of the violation, the liquor was delivered to Wine and Beer of the Andover LLC, not Yakshil. So the state, they did not go to the wholesalers and say, okay, we've got the store now, delivered to us. I was still getting the liquor delivered to Wine and Beer LLC.
I can appreciate that,
I know, but I
again,
believe
the license
the
is held.
other guy actually owned the business.
Right.
I understand your
actually has the
concern,
license.
and I understand you're falling on the sword, I get that, but he owned the business.
And he owned the license as of that day.
Is this typically, Suzanne, how, so this is the first, obviously this is the first time, I think for many of us, if not all of us, that this has happened. What's the normal timeline? I mean, did they follow the proper, they followed the proper policy where they went to submit their information to get the license transferred before then signing over the lease? Is this a typical gray zone that most of our business owners have to face when they want to transfer a license, where at some point the license transfers before the actual business is allowed to be sold? Because you can't, I feel like...
It could be, and within a business transaction, there's a way to accommodate right? So what you're faced with is the regulatory process, and the regulatory process says this is how you can operate a business, you can have a license to sell alcohol, and then this is the way that that license is transferred, and you have to go to your local level, and then you have to go to the ABCC, and then that gets issued at a certain point. Within that is a separate relationship going on, and that's between the business owners, and they have the ability to make any type of accommodation that they need to or would like to in order to accommodate that time frame and to take care of those risks.
In the license process, and you're serving as a licensing.
Not as the business board. That's the challenge.
Right, it's a challenge.
Right.
It's complicated.
And one of the things here is that you have the same, one of the things to note here is that there is the same manager on the license. The license is, the original license is the manager is the same as the new license that is transferred to the new entity.
So
So that's the consistency.
I guess I look at it and go, we are the licensing board here. There is a connecting bridge with who the manager is. That may come into our consideration about what action we take. But from what I'm hearing here is legally, the entity that is impacted, whatever that may be, is going to be the entity that had that license as of the 16th, the date of the violation.
That's what I would say, yes.
So that's, right, that's the practical point,
I think
right?
that's the way to look at it, yeah.
Technically, that's.
Technically, that is. Now,
From what we've heard tonight.
what you're talking about here are things that you ask us to consider in terms of a unique set of circumstances. And so I think we've got some flavor to that, certainly given your history here and those sort of things. But from the licensing standpoint, it is the people who own the license as of the 16th who are impacted by the decision. Right? We're all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, just making sure where we're at.
Okay. So,
And Mr. Bucco's presence here is because he was the owner of the facility despite not being the name on the license.
right.
That is
So
why.
there's nobody from Yakshil here.
Excuse me?
There's nobody from Yakshil that's actually here. There's nobody from the new corporation that's actually here.
To me, there'd be no reason, because quite honestly, listen, I've bought and sold a dozen liquor stores in my last 42 years, and the license transfer is one thing, okay, and I understand that. Taking physical possession of the store, okay, it's quite a different thing. And they did not have physical possession of the store at the time. Okay, the license was transferred, yes, that's a step towards taking the store over. But just because the license transferred doesn't mean they're in, because they weren't in. And I can show you that they weren't, and I hate to put
So
this on them, I don't think it's fair.
They didn't, they don't recognize, or they didn't recognize themselves as the license holder until the lease transferred to them?
Excuse me?
They didn't recognize themselves as the license holder?
They might have known they had the license transfer, but A, they did not have the lease transfer, which is important to me, which means they did not have possession of the store.
But did they, because, I mean, they came before us 2 months ago, and we transferred it to Yakshil. Did Yakshil believe that they were responsible for how alcohol was distributed out of that store?
At that time?
Yes,
of
as the license holder.
violation? No. I mean, everybody was still getting even paid by Wine and Beer LLC, my old corporation, not by them.
But that's, yeah, so they're still the license holder, because when they came to the meeting, it
They
was.
hold the license, but they were not operating the store.
But the license is what makes them have legal responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, whether they believed.
Well, no,
I mean,
but
they were the license
that's, no, I'm saying they came in, they took over the license, but then they left with the license in their name. I just want to understand, just because they're not here. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing about all of this is.
But they weren't licensed because
The request that went out
I
for the
understand,
hearing.
I understand. I'm
Well,
just saying it's
the
unfortunate
board-
they're not here.
I'm not sure they're not here, but no, the question is, obviously,
So that's what's unfortunate, is that by them not being here, they're moving forward with the license still in their name that was in their name prior to this even happening. And I realized that the ownership passed
I mean,
between the
the
two.
license transfers are like that, on the whim of the ABCC, and just because the license transfer doesn't mean, okay, they're running the store. It's not that simple. You're
But
making it cut and dry. It's not
I
cut and
understand
dry.
what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, but They're the license
But
holder.
the
They-
violation
they have the
is
res-
against that, because as the town council said, only one license can be effective at any one time in a store. So the violation is actually against that license.
It is, it's just, that's the way it is.
It's not, maybe not the business, but it's the license.
I mean, we're not black and white with the licensing commission. It doesn't say your first violation, you automatically get X number of days.
I mean, they may not even have known. That was the 16th. I think she said that was when the license got transferred. That was the front. They may not have even got notification that the license had been transferred.
But that's what
But
she's
she
saying.
just
There's an
said-
email. There's an email
They did-
confirming.
They did know it.
That
And they
day?
replied.
Yeah, that's
On
what
the
she just said.
15th.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, they just, I mean, just try to be fair.
No, we appreciate that.
No, we,
And it's not
we
black and white.
understand
I don't
what
think.
you're saying. It's really a predicament.
I would like the message that they get out of this. I mean, because again, this was a holdover employee too that they weren't at that time given responsibility for.
Excuse me, this is what?
It was a holdover employee.
So we should.
Testimony, closed hearing, deliberation. So.
Okay. Yeah, so, all right, so let's go through the process then. Yes, good point. So are there any other questions, anybody else, people that you want to have speak?
No.
No? Okay. So I will suggest we close the hearing. We have a motion to close the hearing?
Move to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the hearing's closed. Now we can deliberate.
Do you want any of this, I don't know, matters, paperwork with the liquor?
Yeah, we can take a look at
and
them.
So here's an invoice that Friday, the day of the violation, to me, Wine and Beer LLC. Here's the inventory. We took the previous day, the 22nd, which was a Thursday. They took over that, they, as far as I'm concerned, took over the business that day.
All right.
Here's it.
So he already, he already spoke to it, so this is just the material that supports what he's already testified to. And anybody can take a look at that.
I mean, I go back to not everything is black and white, and I think it's a missed opportunity to be able to explain to the eggshells that, what they signed up for, fully appreciating what their responsibility was. So I would like to express that I wish that they had been able to attend, because they're going to be the license holder moving forward, and understanding that this is not a foregone conclusion this evening. I mean, I don't know where we'll end up, but I would have liked to have been able to communicate with them that.
Can we hold off on our decision?
Why?
To have them here? What I'm
They
just-
had
Aren't they
notice.
gonna
They
hear,
had
aren't they gonna
notice.
read the response? I mean, they're gonna be fully well communicated when they get an answer from the
So I just,
board.
I wish that they had been present.
They made
I'm-
their choice not to be here.
Chris, I'm just putting it
No.
out for thought.
It's a question. Well, it's up to the board tonight what we want to do. I mean, certainly we'll entertain any motions if you want to have a motion to
Well, I
to
do
table
hear
this,
what the chairman is saying.
or to continue it to another
It-
time.
It seems to make sense that we should at least,
I don't want to hear. I wish that they. I don't want to hear from them. I think that this was their opportunity. I just meant.
but you also were kind of indicating you wanted them to hear from this board as to the seriousness of this.
I think it would be an opportunity, certainly this evening, that we could have communicated.
But can I just say
that- no,
something?
No,
I can't?
no, it's the board deliberates
Okay.
at this point.
I would have liked to have communicated with them just so that they appreciated, because they own multiple liquor stores. I would like them to know that.
This is serious
This,
stuff.
but this also, I mean, this wasn't so cut and dry, that there was a discussion, there's a deliberation, because we're not really clear, at least it sounds up until this point, we're not clear about who or what to take action for. I mean, either way, I feel like the appropriate steps were taken, and that they are a new license holder, and I would treat them as such with.
I would say if it helps, out of any communication that the licensing board would want with the owner, we can articulate an understanding of the facts in addition to whatever else you decide. It's not like we would expect you're gonna ask us to draft communication.
Yeah, it's not a
back.
boilerplate.
Right, that could be crafted to indicate that we understand the sort of fact pattern, if you want us to do that in terms of crafting a document, so that they understand that, there's an expectation that they would, but that's, whatever direction you want to provide as a function of whatever you decide.
I guess I come down to, it's a thing my mother told you, ignorance of the law is not an acceptable excuse. The rules are the rules. And But at the same time, it also is an enlightenment opportunity for our own process, which is, this won't be the last time a liquor license is transferred. And so we ought to take a look after this is over with about maybe some clarification of policy or process, so it is very clear. That all said, I do think that we have the opportunity to consider extenuating circumstances here. But I am very much of the nature that if there hadn't been a transfer of license, I think we have to look at what this violation means first and say, if this was a license holder and that they'd own it for 20 years and look to hold it for another 20 years, how would we look at this? And then we take into account whatever other circumstances we think are valuable. But I think the transfer issue is a cloud here, because I think we've heard, at least to my satisfaction, very clearly, the responsible party are the people who own that license, and they chose not to be here today. Whether that was of advice or perspective, we don't know. I'm not sure that matters. But the facts are the facts. Nobody's going to argue the facts anymore, right? It's really kind of up to us as to what message we want to send with our decision impacting their license, right? It's on us to decide that now. And is that something that we feel that a warning is strong enough, or do we feel that something more significant? And so I'll open up the door to that discussion.
Well, actually, I'll open up that door.
Okay. All right.
So if we have, is there, well, let's take it the direct route. Is there a motion at this point, or do we need further discussion?
I would like to further discuss something.
Okay.
Would we, I know there's some recommended guidelines, but would we recommend something like they need to buy a machine to read the IDs? Because if there's not a machine there currently to read the IDs, it seems like there should be one, because obviously someone underage has been in there 6 times, she said.
Well, so I
Trying
can
to
tell you
buy.
this, we can't, I don't believe we can require it, but we can highly suggest that it's a good idea.
Oh, we cannot require it.
And this is my opinion, and others may have a different opinion, but we can strongly suggest it, and if the machine is in place, like Mr. Bucco has the machine, and he's been very cooperative with the police over the years, and I've been there when I've seen it in action, when the license.
You get carded?
No, but some Merrimack student in front of me did, and the license failed. So, I mean, I've seen it work. I mean, we can strongly suggest that it would be and that would be a good reason for them to have been here tonight, is that we can strongly suggest that they have this machine in place.
And they might have vowed to purchase one. That's the problem with them not being here,
Right,
unfortunately.
and you know, sometimes the next time around, if the license is, and we've had this happen before, the license was put into the machine and the machine failed, and the machine didn't identify it as a fake license, and when indeed it was, then, you know, that's, you know, how do you, but again, that's the jeopardy of taking an out-of-state license, some of these businesses.
But it also, you know, I think the board has always felt as though if you've done everything reasonably or humanly possible, and the license looked really good or whatever, and it passed or whatever, the machine failed, and it, in essence, was a fake ID. I think that we look at that with, you know, you try to be fair.
We've had that happen. We've had that happen with the expensive machines.
It can sometimes pass, you know, a fake ID, but it's rare, and it gets probably more rare as the equipment gets. I think the thing that's just the most troubling is, and I hear what you're saying, and you're, but them not being here is just the most troubling.
Can I just say one thing?
Okay, I'll let you say this.
The reason they're not here is they don't even know about this.
Oh, dear.
This letter was delivered to me at McAloon's Liquors by the police. They did not get this letter, okay? It came directly to me. They're not even aware of this.
Oh, my, okay.
Okay,
It was addressed to the
It's
Winthrop
addressed to
Ave.
the Winthrop Ave, but it was delivered to me personally at McAloon's. So I didn't say anything to them about it because I didn't feel it was their problem. And I wanted to take it upon myself to deal with it. So just so you know, and I'll give you the copy of this, just so you know, it was delivered to me at McAloon's.
Do we send this certified mail? Mr. Manager?
I mean, it
Well,
was
we
addressed to
appreciate
the
your
Winthrop
honesty.
Ave, but it
Yes,
was,
thank you for that.
but it was delivered directly to,
It was hand-delivered to me.
so they're not even aware that this even occurred.
No.
Okay, now that's a new wrinkle.
So let's put things in perspective. We're back in the testimony phase here, but you're the manager of the Andover, of the liquor store. This was sent to the manager. You're the manager.
Correct.
You should have informed the owner.
Well, whether they should have or not, I don't know if they typically serve the manager or the
Well, it's
owner.
addressed to Winthrop Avenue. It should have gone to Winthrop
But
Avenue.
it was addressed to you as manager of wine and beer at the Andovers.
At Winthrop Avenue.
I understand, but it was certain, you are the manager.
Right, but it was delivered to Macaloon's Liquors.
All you're doing is talking in circles from our
Well, no,
perspective.
just telling you the
It
facts.
could have been delivered anywhere. It was delivered to the manager of wine and beer at the Andovers, which was the violating party, correct?
I suppose.
Well, you've got a couple of choices as it relates to that. One is, as the manager, I assume you had an obligation to communicate with the owners under the obligations of being a manager under ABC regulations.
Correct.
Okay.
However,
So we can start this again. That would be a suggestion. We'll have a whole nother public hearing, table this off to the side. We'll go through a process of notifying not just the manager, but also the owners of record as it relates to this, and go back through the whole process again if you'd like.
I don't think that that's a bad idea.
Well, I mean, I tend to agree, because if now, it's kind of new, that if the licensees did not know that they even had a violation, I mean, it's,
Well,
that makes it even more complicated.
I think the concept that it was delivered to the manager of the store, and that the manager, anyway, yes, whatever.
I think in fairness to the new owners, though, that they should know, and they should come before us and have our conversation about the machines and everything else.
So if you look at the information in front of you, the record before you, who the owners of the LLC are, is Mr. Bucco is also an owner of that LLC. He's shown us that. He's got the 1%, but that
And a
is an
manager.
owner. A manager and the owner. So I just wanted to clarify that because I want to make sure that you understand the facts as you go forward on this.
So it was delivered to, in fairness, be perfectly fair, to the address of the store.
It wasn't.
350 Winthrop Street?
It wasn't, it was delivered to
Well, I'm looking
531.
at the letter that's 350 Winthrop
It's
Street.
addressed
Yes.
there, but it wasn't delivered there.
It wasn't delivered there.
Who's responsible for delivering these letters?
This wasn't also mailed there, because this is CC
No,
of
a
the
police
PD.
officer delivered it.
It might have been separate than what was mailed as well.
Can we understand,
Yeah.
like, what is, when there's a violation like this, what is the actual process? So a police officer hand delivers it,
Find
and
out.
we also send it via mail?
I would have expected
Our
that there would have been
town
mail
clerk
delivered.
is nodding.
Usually the police officer picks that up, brings it to, I would assume, the establishment, and has whoever receives that sign that they received it and then return it.
But there is no, it's not actually placed in the mail, because Mr.
It's
Buco's
not.
not disputing that he was hand-delivered it.
So it was delivered by the, what's the form say? The piece of paper say that?
What do you mean, what does it say?
says-
It says, it was just sent, it was addressed to Winthrop Ave.
Delivered to
And it was, but it was delivered, according to Mr. Buco,
Is where it was delivered to?
it does not, no, there's no indication on here where it was delivered to.
Well, we've just learned that it's only hand-delivered, and it was hand-delivered by a police officer to Mr.
Right.
Buco
And it was to
directly,
be hand-delivered to 350 Winthrop Avenue.
and it sounds like that was not the
But it was
case.
not.
How do we just,
It was hand-delivered to me at 351 Chickering Road.
and there's no signature from an officer that says it was delivered at a certain point, we're just assuming that was the case.
No.
I know who the officer was, I mean, I can tell you.
Yeah, no,
But, yeah, I mean, from what we have, there's nothing that indicates where it was
but
delivered.
just to be fair to Suzanne's point, and we can certainly trace that down, it was sent to a part owner, who's also the manager, at the address of the property that had the violation, under the name of the property that had the violation.
I just want to understand the process in general, because here we have,
Right.
I mean, this is why we're in this, there are many reasons why we're in this situation, but it was hand-delivered, and we didn't actually mail it to the address that the record shows that we have as an address. And it doesn't matter, because it's addressed to
I will
Mr.
take Mr.
Buco.
Buco at his word, but I don't have
That
confirmation of that.
address, remember that.
What's that?
It wasn't hand-delivered to that address.
No,
No,
that's
the
what
point.
we
It
were
was
saying,
hand-delivered
yeah.
to you, but I mean, we have an address on a letter. I mean, it's still addressed to you, so my guess would be that the owners wouldn't have necessarily opened it. It's just
But-
an interesting
I mean, yeah,
flaw in our
Would it
process.
matter if he was standing in the Winthrop Avenue
No,
or
I'm
the
just
Macmillans and
I'm
he
just
could get his
acknowledging
hand
the
together?
flaw of our process.
Okay, you know what, I guess I'd like to hear from town council and the town manager what they recommend, and then for us to kind of,
I guess from my, so town council probably will be more specific than I. From my perspective, and I certainly will chase down where the specific delivery is. The gray is not the license piece, although I certainly can understand the sort of facts, the business side versus the licensing side. Two, I'm not as caught up on the delivery, quite frankly, because Mr. Bucco serves as manager, will continue to serve as manager and as part owner. I think that the fact that I would assume that the manager would communicate to the other owners about the violation, I don't think it necessarily needed to be hand-delivered to every person. I think, though, that you have the information, and it seems, from my perspective, that you can communicate with the owners, however we define that group of folks, about the expectations in this community, about the requirement at the store, or the hope that they install a machine, about the expectation moving forward as people, some of which were new people here in the community. I mean, if it was a first-time violation of someone coming in, you often would write them a sternly worded warning, right? That's common. I think if different folks show up at the next meeting in Mr. Bucco, you're probably gonna end up there anyway. I'm guessing. I mean, it doesn't seem like you're gonna be anywhere else, given at a minimum that it's a little confusing about, that whole pattern of who was operating. So it would seem like you'd write a sternly written letter to all of the owners involved and say, here's an expectation of the community in terms of having certain equipment, here's the expectation because we're in a college town, and this isn't going to be acceptable moving forward.
well, that's pretty much the
That's
way
my take.
I've been thinking, that I think a warning is, for a variety of reasons, seems to
Well,
make sense. but-
Can we talk in the form of a motion, or are we just still discussing the, I mean, I think we should, we've closed the hearing, we've heard a lot of
I
input,
understand.
and we should,
I would move that we write a very sternly written warning and list our expectations and.
You need to find a finding first, a motion for
Oh,
a finding.
golly, gee.
Well,
Oh, that'll be easy.
so we need a motion of whether or not a violation did or did not
Correct.
occur.
Which you've agreed without a motion, so.
Well, I think we all agree that
So
a
then
But we
violation
still need a
occurred.
motion, and we still need a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Violation occurred.
Okay, we have a motion that a violation occurred. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so we've confirmed that a violation, or we found that a violation occurred. Now, how do we want to handle that violation? Given these circumstances that we've heard and everything, what do we want to do to?
I think all along I felt as though a very sternly written letter of warning outlining our expectations, outlining ways that they would garner favor with this board if they purchase the equipment, or at least give us some sense that they're trying to move forward and protecting. It is right down the street from the college, and it's pretty apparent that these kids were college kids, and that was a lot of liquor.
So I second Selectman Spadili's motion, and I second it because I think that you can't have something like this not happen and let it go unacknowledged. However, I do realize that it's not, it wasn't the owner's fault, the current owner, I should say, Yexel's current. It does not sound like it's something that I would hope is a reoccurring issue. They've terminated the employee, so that person has lost their job, so that was the person who was committing the offense. The responsibility still lies with the license holder, and I think that this is an important reminder that you need to be on top of what your employees are doing. And if you're an employee, you'll lose your job. And I think that was a good message, frankly, that was sent, that if you...
It's gotta be. But again, just to reiterate, she was my employee.
We get that.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would assume that just before you guys vote, if up or down, that the letter will include some reference to the benefit of having a machine that checks the licenses, a communication.
Talk about tip certification for
Tip certification.
employees. And
Would it be fair that we'll draft something to have the chairman of licensing review before, I know you signed
right,
it.
and it's going to also talk about, first a warning, and then also provide the other guidelines that we have based on additional.
We'll draft something and send it to you as long as the board's okay with.
I think it should include Rosemary's point from the last meeting we had, which is a Massachusetts license is the only acceptable form of ID. If they have a reader and they feel reliable to accept an out-of-state license because the reader says that it's valid, then okay, but I
It
thought
is,
that was a very
it isn't, for lay
valid
people, it
point.
seems strange, but yeah, you can take an out-of-state ID, but boy, you do it at your own risk.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not acceptable, unfortunately, where you live, well, no, I'm not saying that right. We have college kids, and they all have out-of-state
Oh, they
licenses,
even well
so
aware.
we're gonna be more on our game.
And they're getting clever and clever.
Thank goodness to our officers here that they stopped what could have been, you know, a very bad situation
Yes.
for everybody. There was a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big
So
party.
we'll try to keep the letter sub 18 pages.
Yeah, sounds
And
perfect.
paraphrase all of the thoughts expressed.
Right.
So hold on, so let me just get where we are at. We have a motion, we have a second. Who seconded? Phil, you seconded it? Phil, Selectman Colagiero seconded it. So we're in the discussion, so, okay.
So I would just, can we, in crafting, since we can't require them to get the machine, can we say, if they don't have the machine and a violation comes up again, we will take that into account in some way?
Yeah,
Is there a
we
way
could-
to
Or we
frame
could put
it?
it in a positive way and say, if you do have the machine and a violation comes in and the
What-
license
Exactly,
failed
yes.
the test or passed the test of the machine and it was a failed license, then, you know, there would be some consideration given to that.
Give some
So-
direction.
We have had instances in the past where there have been license holders who have had a violation. We've given them guidance. They weren't required to follow it. They've had a second violation occur, clearly did not follow our guidance, and I think our punishment reflected that, or
I
the
think
penalties reflected that.
Probably something
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, that's,
Most people do,
Okay.
most of our business
And
owners,
and
they
it sounds
go
like
get the
they're
machine.
experienced liquor store owners, so they would know that this is, you know, highly recommended. Okay, so we have a motion for a written warning, which will be drafted by the town manager's office and reviewed
town
by
council.
myself and town council, of course, and then sent to the Yakshil LLC. We have a second by Mr. Colagiero. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll consider this matter closed at this point.
Is there any way you can
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
thanks, guys.
Thank you, detectives. Great job.
I know.
There's a lot of alcohol.
Okay, well, it's been a long night. Okay, next, we have a request from Dolly Miller to renew her fortune teller license for psychic readings at 163 Turnpike Street. Is Miss Miller here tonight? She is here tonight.
Oh, you've been here for hours. You should have known this was gonna take this long.
Oh, you know what? That's,
I know everything.
he,
She's patient. She's patient.
We tease her every year.
We do.
Dawn does.
It's okay.
Especially Dawn, who's not here.
So I'm asking for permission to renew my license.
Okay. Favorable recommendations, obviously, from all of the boards, all of the, well, actually, do we have them? Yeah, we have from police, we have favorable. From the building inspector, we have favorable. From fire department, we have favorable.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval. Dolly and her family have, I think, shown themselves and demonstrated that they've been responsible business owners in town for many years. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Selectman Nobley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much for coming in.
Good
Bye,
night.
Dolly.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request from Mr. David Gladstone, who, due to a family illness, could not be here tonight. He has a request for his business, Amigos Locos, Wildfire Catering, for a mobile food truck license that he plans on using on the Merrimack College campus during school activities. It has been reviewed by police, building, fire, and health, and have had no concerns or no issues. Health Department is going to do an inspection of the truck as per our zoning law, or our bylaw, when the events come close, but that's the only open issue, but the Health Department will do an inspection of the truck prior to selling the food. And this is this license, I believe, is going to be only for private property. So we have a, within our bylaws, I believe we allow for 4 mobile food truck licenses on public ways, but for private, we don't have a limitation. If I'm interpreting that correctly. So we don't have the applicant here, so I think all of the information has been provided, the licensing, the insurance, the ServSafe certificates, everything that was asked for on the application has been provided, and a little more. They actually provided a Corey form as well that wasn't required, but they did do it.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion, Selectman DeColiero, second from Selectman Smedili. All those in favor, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have a request from Armin I'm sorry, I'm gonna torture your last name, Jeknovian. And you can.
Jeknovian.
Jack Navorian, okay, that was close.
Well, here I am again.
Of St. Gregory's
see you
Church,
all.
let me just finish reading it. Of St. Gregory's Church for a one-day all-alcohol license for a cigar night at 158 Main Street on June 14th, 2018, from 6 to 11:30 p.m., and a request to waiver the fees, as it's for a nonprofit.
That's correct.
fundraiser.
And we've been doing this every year. It's a major fundraiser for the church. We do raffle off for Mercedes-Benz, 1 in 500 chance, and that helps out, with it also. If anyone's interested in a ticket, let me know. So anyway, that's about it, unless you have any questions.
No, and as you stated, this has been an ongoing event. We've never had any issues from this event. It's always been well-run and well-attended. So I'll hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
A motion by Selectman DeColiero, second by Selectman Smedili. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your patience
Thank
tonight.
you.
Okay, next one, we have a request of J.T. Thompson of Top Notch Brewing for 4 one-day wine and malt licenses for a pop-up beer garden at the Stevens Coolidge Place on May 17th, 2018, May 18th, 2018, from 4 to 9. On both of those dates from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. And on May 19th, 2018, from 12 to 9 p.m. And on May 20th, 2018, from 12 to 6 p.m. Exciting event, so
Yes.
glad to hear.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to be like former Selectman Stewart saying, any samples?
No, but it's an exciting event, and it's sounds interesting. So why don't you give us a little background on it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind introducing
Oh,
yourself.
yes. I am J.T. Thompson from Notch Brewing in Salem, Massachusetts. This is the event that we're asking for licensing for is the first of a part of a series of events we're doing with the trustees, and we're all excited to start with Stevens Coolidge Place the weekend of May 17th. The whole idea behind the event is to not down to every last detail, but essentially replicate an experience that's very common in Europe and that also mirrors what you would see in a brewery tap room on a weekend. It's a family-friendly environment. This isn't a beer festival that's going to start at noon on Saturday and run for 9 hours. It's almost more of a sort of a concession. If you go to parks in Germany, you'll find a beer garden, and sometimes people will go specifically to the beer garden to meet friends and have a beer and enjoy spending some time outside in the nice weather. And other times people may be in the park and then decide to have a beer. And so the whole idea behind this event and the other events is it's a way to sort of cross-pollinate audiences. We can bring our audience in touch with the trustees a little bit more and offer a unique piece of programming, not just for the trustees, but no one else is really doing this in New England in this pop-up style. So the idea is that we can move around and connect with different audiences around different parts of the trustees' sites and also give some funds to the trustees from the event.
So how will the alcohol, how will the beer be served, and will it be contained in one area, or will people be allowed to wander the garden with a beer in their hand? Is that how so just kind of enlighten me on that.
So we'll be serving beer. We have a van that will have taps on the side, so we will be serving draft beer from a bar. All of our bartenders from the tap room that'll be staffing the event are tips trained.
Everyone on our staff who serves is tips trained. And we'll be setting up in the lawn behind the house, along the trees and near the greenhouse. And the idea was for them to be able to take a stroll through the garden with their beer, if that's in accordance with the wishes of the licensing board / Board of Selectmen. So would like to have sort of that back lawn to be able to do that.
I can see that. Will there be any kind of security to prevent people from leaving the facility? So there's a couple of gates at the Stevens Estate that allow people to leave. Will there be people there to prevent them from leaving the facility with or the grounds with a beer? Because I think that's important.
Yes, absolutely. And containing the site is an important consideration. We don't currently have staffing plans to have people at those gates. I've talked extensively with Kate Bebo, who's the site manager at Stevens Coolidge. If that's a concern, we could put signage up that would say no alcohol past this point. There are a number of ways we could address that concern of yours, and would be happy to do so.
What would the alcohol be served in? Red Solo cups? Clear
No,
glasses?
no. Actually ceramic.
Really?
We have half-liter ceramic German Steinkrugs we'll be using. And we'll be cleaning them with a 3-bay sink, just like you'd see in any other bar. So we'll have a 3-bay sink inside of our van, where we'll be cleaning and sanitizing glasses. And then we'll be able to reuse them. So we'll both be reducing waste and then offering a little bit nicer of an experience than maybe a red Solo cup in a field somewhere.
I think I agree with that. I think that's a good idea, though, to put some type of signage that says no alcohol beyond this point. Otherwise, I think that
I think that's a good idea, but I think we need more. I think we need something. I think we actually, I mean, when we do the 4th of July on the Common, we have folks standing at the entrance of the where we serve beer, and we don't allow it to leave that small area. We're talking about a much larger area, so I would be more comfortable with somebody at those 2 gates, even if it's a Stevens Coolidge or someone, to prevent people from leaving with the beer. I just think it's a risk to have people, walking out deciding to go down to the Common, because I believe this is in conjunction with at least one. No, there's no other festival.
Sheep sharing is the 21st.
Okay.
Right.
I believe sheep sharing Sunday the 20th. Because Kate's talked with the organizers of that festival to sort of cross promote, and they've included us in their show.
Yeah, so
Then I think yes.
So people walking down to sheep sharing with a beer.
The 21st is Monday, you're right.
Well, you're not going to want your change.
Yeah.
But it's also consistency with what we do. I mean, that was a big deal that it was all gated in there on the Common, and I think we do need to have some consistency.
Yeah.
But I think what you propose is reasonable.
Yeah. I think it's great that you can have the experience of walking around the garden with a beer, because the place is obviously so beautiful. You don't want to have to sit in the greenhouse. It's nice to be able to walk around. But I think we need some kind of security at the gate to prevent people from leaving the facility or the grounds with a beer. And also, we need people around keeping an eye on, like they have at Red Sox games, they have alcohol checkers to make sure that people aren't buying a beer and then handing it off to someone underage or something like that. That's kind of another, I would think another security aspect of it that we'd have to just keep an eye on that as well.
We'll be staffing with 3 to 4 staff people each night of the event. So it won't be one person stuck behind the bar just pouring beers. The staffing is designed to be able to help police the area as well.
Okay. So I think I'd like to see some kind of security at those 2 gates to make sure that we don't have people leaving. So whether it's from the Stevens Coolidge or from your own people, or if we have to, hire a detail officer to cover those spots.
You, not we.
Yeah, right.
It's like, wow, that's awfully generous.
No. Sorry.
No.
Well, maybe you might get one to volunteer. I don't know. So, any other questions or comments? I'm real excited for the event.
If I may just ask a point of clarification on controlling that site. If we were to close the gates and put a sign up that says no exit, like if we control the access points, would that sort of meet your concern, or do you specifically want them staffed?
Well, even in that case, wouldn't you need to still, you'd have to still staff some entrance
At
points?
least one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it were locked, if it has a lock on it, but if it's just closed, people walk out.
Put a sign in front. I think if you close the gate, you put a sign in front of the
Yeah,
gate,
I
no
guess.
alcohol past this point. and then you have somebody at the gate where people come in and out. That'd be okay.
I mean, if the board's okay with that, yeah. I just don't want to see people walking down Andover Street with a beer heading to sheep shearing, you know?
Oh, believe me, I don't either. I understand the concern very much.
Yeah, I mean, they have those.
You don't want them to steal those mugs.
Triangle.
Well, they'll be putting deposits on the mugs, so they'll.
I was
they'll be,
gonna ask, yeah, but how are you gonna prevent people from walking off with your?
Yes, yeah, the plan for that
So
is
deposit on the mug would be good,
you put a deposit down on your tab when you pick up your mug, and then when you return it, you get your deposit taken off your check.
That'll definitely take care of some of it.
And
too.
so, if you do decide that you like the mug very much, as long as there's no beer in it, you're more than welcome to walk off with it and have a nice memory of the day.
Motion. Just be specific in whatever motion you like.
Yeah. Okay, so I will entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, motion approval pending that the access points and exit points to the, whatever access and exit points are accessible by the public are manned by professional staff to ensure that alcohol doesn't leave the premise.
And signed in some.
And signage.
With signage indicating that
signage.
it cannot leave the premise.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I like the way the weekend starts on Thursday. Is that a European tradition that you're trying to bring this way?
You know, it's
Thursdays
going to
are
be
fun.
warm, and hopefully it's going to be sunny. So we figure there may be a few people that that maybe want to cut an hour out of their Thursday and spend
It'll be
some
the
time
week
outside with friends.
From your
The
words,
week of town meeting.
from your words to the Stein. Okay? There you go.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Thompson, thank you, and good luck. I'll see you
in a
there.
few.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll hopefully see you out.
You want to check her ID, though. She has some sneaky ways around things.
I'm not waiting
Should we
for
tell
that
them to
one,
get a
sir.
stamp?
Yeah.
No quorum, please.
The stamp thing. Oh, my.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Good night now.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have,
To North Andover. What do you get to with it? 10 o'clock, you had to sit through the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, can I recommend Mr. Cameron?
absolutely, yeah. I'm sorry, yes.
He's waited long enough.
Oh, yeah, sure, Mr. Cameron, and a great cause, too. So a request from Larry Cameron of Angel Flight Northeast for a one-day wine and malt license for the Ride for Angels on September 9, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and a request for the waiver of the fee. Mr. Cameron, would you like to talk about the... What's that?
That's not me.
Oh. Oh, it's not him.
I'm with Butlers and Bars.
Oh, okay, so you're next. I will get you next. All right, so,
I'll still make the motion for Angel Flight.
Second, Selectman Spadua's motion.
Move approval for Angel Flight. Great
yeah,
organization.
great organization and do
As long as
great
they're
work.
not flying after they're drinking.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so now we'll go to, let's see, we'll skip to requests for Butlers. So you're just here for the Butlers and Bars ones, you're not here for all the other ones? Okay, so request of Butlers and Bars for one-day liquor license at Smolak Farms for the following events. A wedding reception in the tent, May 12th, 2018, from 4 to 10. A wedding reception in the tent on May 19th, from 4 to 10. A wedding reception in the tent on June 3rd, from 4 to 9. And a wedding reception in the tent on June 23rd, from 4 to 10. On these, all but the second one, May 19th was a wine and malt. All the others are all alcohol.
My name's Arthur Ringles. I am, I guess on paper, the co-owner of Butlers and Bars. Like you say, you're familiar with my wife, Deborah. Unfortunately, she had a death in the family. She had to leave the state bright and early this morning. The only information I was to inform you that she is, as you all know, quite knowledgeable of your laws is one I see here is on Sunday. She knows to stop specifically by 9 o'clock, and the other nights at 10 o'clock.
Right.
And I do work most of the bars with her, and believe me, when it's time to shut that bar, it's shut.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, we have a motion for approval. We have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for waiting, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Just a bit of housekeeping that we didn't do is, as part of the previous two requests for the St. Gregory's Church and for Angel Flight, they both requested a waiver of the fees, which we did not include in the motion, so I think we should go back and amend those motions, or at least have a second motion. Why don't we have another motion, if we are in favor of that, why don't we have a motion to waive those fees?
Mr. Chair, I motion that we waive the fees for Angel Flight and what was the other one? Oh, the St. Gregory's.
Okay, so we have two motions. One to waive the fee for St. Gregory's one-day festival or cigar night, and one for the Angel Flight. So do we have a second for both of those?
Second.
Both of them?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so we'll waive the fees. All right, next we have a request from Merrimack College for 10 one-day liquor licenses for the following events. I'm not gonna read them all, but they're in your packet, and they are detailed on what they are. Are there any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, motion approval of the 10 licenses as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for all 10 licenses as requested by Merrimack College on the dates and times requested. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so now we're down to a request of Michael Smolak for 2 one-day liquor licenses. My understanding is the first one has been scratched. The one on May 15th is not going to happen, so they're actually looking for 2 of them. So dinner in the tent on May 20th, 2018, from 5 to 9, wine and malt, and dinner in the barn on June 16th, 2018, from 5 to 10, wine and malt.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, so motion for those 2 events, and then seconded by Selectman DeColigiero. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so that takes care of license. I'll have a motion to move on to licensing.
Mr. Chairman, motion to move out of licensing.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're on licensing.
We're back in regular session. We have gone through our agenda. We are at old business. There's no old business to report. Any new business?
We're all old now.
I think we've aged a little bit this year. Yeah.
Public comment, Mr. Limpert? I don't know.
No, Stan.
Frankly, I think that Mr. Limpert earned it after this meeting.
Ray's going to return soon.
It just-
Who am I going to pick on?
It just better be a good comment, because you put 3 hours of your time.
I know, I waited all this time for this. Well, I really want to respond to something that Chris McClure said about, we have a culture of change here, which I thought was an interesting comment. I've never thought about that much, but I'd like to say I agree with that completely. But the thing that got me to thinking about listening to his presentation is there's always been a couple of things in the past few years that have really stood out to me, but he's now added a third to that. The 2 things that have stood out to me previous to this were the wonderful financial situation we find our town in now, our bond ratings, the way our budgets go, thanks to our town administration who have done such a wonderful job. The second that I think we can all be very proud of is the dramatic improvement in our facilities. We've really been executing our facilities master plan. I think we must be the envy of all the towns around, or maybe all the towns in the Commonwealth. But the third thing Mr. McClure has added to that list now for me is our use of information technology, which I think may outlast all of those things. I mean, that may be the one thing that we really get remembered for. And I think it's really been a dramatic change in what's going on. And while I'd like to think that I could agree with Mr. McClure that there's a culture of change, I think it really depends on the people you've got in the jobs. So he's a wonderful guy, and we should be so grateful we have him in that position.
And so is Brian.
He's doing just an outstanding job. I mean, he's gone so much further than you could ever expect someone might go in that position. So I just wanted to make sure that that got acknowledged. He's a great guy, and we really owe him a lot, too, for everything he's done and is doing for transparency, communication, accessibility to data. I mean, the fact that you can just get online now and look at all kinds of stuff that you never would have thought would have been available in the past. So I think that's just a wonderful part of what's going on good in the town of North Andover, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
We all concur. Absolutely.
So I'll move on to, seeing nobody else in the audience from the public, town manager's report. So we have monthly reports in our agenda, and we have an Ask the Manager segment if there are any questions we have for the manager.
If I can introduce you, first of all, let me jump off Stan's comments that we have great staff here. They do really good work, often unnoticed, quite frankly. In Chris's case, he takes these vague suggestions that don't sound anything like technology and converts them to a whole bunch of comments about how I came up with suggestions. That's just me vaguely saying something obscure, and he can translate that into something meaningful for the community. And we've been fortunate. I think his predecessor was also very solid, but Chris takes it to a new level and continues to have solid relationships with the school. Stan remembers the day when we talked about technology as if it was this sort of far-off planet, and because we were behind in so many levels, quite frankly, in the schools and in the town, and now it sort of seamlessly just travels along. And we have a structure that we, for many years, debated what this true structure should be. This board was involved in combining some of those resources, and in the end have this remarkable network manager in Dave Berdor, who is the person sort of behind the screen that no one even knows of, that keeps that infrastructure alive. So we have our own utility here. It's called information technology. It's a very robust utility, and it has really strong resources, and it's people like Chris and Dave and the folks in the school department that keep it alive. So we're fortunate, but we have to continue to evolve, whether you call it change or not. We need to continue to find different ways to get information to the public. They expect it. The only other thing I have to add, and I'll answer any questions you have about the reports, is this week we roll out a somewhat novel program, taking the spirit of what it was in my professional association, Volunteer Month. We rolled out a program called the Paid Volunteer Time Off Program to our exempt employees, where they'll be allowed to take up to 2 days off to volunteer at listed nonprofits, and if they come up with some other suggestions of nonprofits and volunteer agencies that they feel have particular importance to themselves or the community, we'll give them up to 2 days off to take that time. We'll pay them for those days, and they'll give back to the community, something that we think is important. Any good organization goes beyond the four walls of these buildings and has to give back in some way. And so from our community's perspective, the community that is the workforce here, we have a lot of folks with interests that they want to contribute those interests. And so we've offered them the ability to do that. And if they volunteer at one of these nonprofits over the weekend, then we'll give them a matching amount of time off during the week, so that we don't just force people to say, hey, we're going to be good citizens during the weekends or during the week. They'll have the opportunity to do both. So it's a little bit of a pilot program, but something we think will be embraced. We're encouraging highly that these folks do it as teams within the departments or in other places. They find something they're interested in. We have one group interested in volunteering at the Alzheimer's Association as a group. And so, one, it could be a team-building exercise, but also something where, as a government, as a community, as a group of employees, we're going to start giving back to the community. And we think, as the operation, the administration here, we should empower employees to do that.
I think that's
It's
great.
an awesome
I mean,
idea, Andrew.
That's something that's done in private industry a lot, you know, we do it at Cisco and everything, but I think it's
Great.
really forward-thinking for you guys to take that on and give the employees that opportunity to do that. And I think hopefully they'll take advantage of that and get out there and pay it
That'd be
forward,
great.
you know.
Yeah, definitely. It's great.
And the team building, if they do it as a group,
That's
that's the real kicker.
Yeah.
That's the real kicker to it. I want to also send accolades. I had a neighbor who just said, I can't believe how good the pickup has been, and they even had some yard refuge, and they were in bags, got early. They snagged it. And she was
Take
like-
it if you see it. That's our
They-
motto this week.
She was so impressed. She said, oh my God, I want to go out there and bring them coffee and donuts. I can't believe they.
Everything
so-
but beer.
Again, it's a
Good. We
quality of
appreciate
life
that. We'll
issue.
pass that along.
It was
We had a rough go, so it's great that we,
really impressive, really impressive.
We're getting a lot of positive feedback, and I know that some folks still see material out there, but if you could stack in one pile everything that's been picked up, I think you'd be pretty amazed by what that pile looks like. So we
How many
appreciate the effort
stories
of
is
DPW.
I mean, I was working at my son's house, and we made 6 trips one day out to the Sears Center, and you could just see every time we went out, that pile was getting bigger and bigger and bigger at the Sears Center until it was almost all the way across the driveway, you know, when it started out in the back, and it just kept growing. People were out there all day dropping stuff off.
Well, as a reminder, today was the first day that we're picking up what I'll refer to as twigs or small branches.
Bundled up.
Curbside, bundled up, odd curbside on your trash day. So for those folks who still haven't seen trash picked up, you know, the rest of the week, feel free to put material up there, and our waste hauler is partnered with us to pick those up and Our staff, our crews remain out there. We've got a substantial amount of work still left to do. We had to spend a fair amount of time up at Stevens Estate, quite frankly, making that place look like something, and it's going to require more work. But those are long days typically for private contractors and our own staff, because you're talking about removing a tree, it's not a 5-minute effort, it's a couple of hour effort. So I do appreciate that. Yep, they've been through the comment as well. They're working on it.
Any final comments? Entertain a motion.
Town meeting next.
Okay. Celtics up 13 at the end of 3, and the
Bruins
Bruins
lost.
lost.
Oh, you.
Dick's always ahead of me.
No.
So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt.
Second?
Second by Selectman Nobley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.